Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 12th meeting of the Planning Commission. If you all join me, please, in a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Ricucci.
Here.
Mr. Brentnall.
Here.
Mr. Donayo.
Here.
Mr. Sevison absent. Mr. Gray in the snow. Mr. Moss.
Here. All right, and Planning Director's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Paul Thompson with Planning Services. Recent board actions. Last Tuesday, the board adopted an ordinance to extend the temporary prohibition on signs, prohibited signs within the county. So things like banners, A-frames, which are typically prohibited in our zoning ordinance, were allowed to be placed for a one-year period, and this was an extension from last year, so it's a continuation of the one-year prohibition for another year. So that was the
one-year approval for a year, isn't it? Not prohibition.
Yeah. And then the other thing that was adopted was an ordinance that allowed a fee waiver for temporary outdoor events when those events are agricultural type events. So if there was an agricultural type event that was doing a temporary event, like for example, a farm and barn tour would be one example. Those type of events with the agricultural commissioner's approval would be allowed to get a fee waiver through our application process. So the board adopted an ordinance for that.
So that's not a temporary ordinance, that's a permanent ordinance?
That's a permanent ordinance. Upcoming board agenda, there's a Tahoe meeting on April 23rd and 24th. And on those agendas is the updates. The Cabin Creek Biomass Facility is one of those. The TRPA Regional Plan update is another one that we'll be updating the board on, and the Tahoe Community Plan update. So we'll be discussing those projects with the board, giving them a status and update of that.
Is this is the Tahoe plan just beginning, or what's the?
Just beginning.
Okay.
Just started. We've appointed the area team members. There's 4 team areas within the basin for different areas. So we've appointed those. We're going to have a workshop at the beginning of May to kind of kick off the whole process for the community plan update.
Are you just doing one plan for all of Tahoe, or are you doing like Homewood, Kings Beach?
We're doing them all. There's 9 existing community plans, and what we're going to do is have one policy document, and then 4 individual zoning ordinances and design guidelines to kind of take into account the different geographic areas. So like there's one for the West Shore, one for the Tahoe City area, and then one for the 2 for the for Kings Beach, and one for like Tahoe Vista. So 4 total.
So this doesn't include anything outside the basin?
No, it does not.
Okay.
Upcoming Planning Commission, the April 26th Planning Commission is canceled. And then on May 10th, there's the Zoning Administrator Appeal of the Lucky's Travel Plaza sign. That's scheduled to go on that agenda. As far as other news, in case you haven't heard, Wes Zicker has announced his retirement, and that is, he'll be retiring on May 11th. On Tuesday, it was announced that Kathy Martinez, the Auditor Controller, is retiring. And then today, the board is meeting to interview candidates on the CEO position.
So you're the last one standing?
I didn't put my card in that hat. Any questions? All right.
Thank you, Paul. Now would be the time for public comments on any items that are not on the agenda today. If anybody would like to speak to something, please come forward. Looks like none. So we have the subdivision and conditional use permit modification for Teresina. Roy?
Or Teresina. Thank you, Chairman Moss. The request today is for a gated entry for the Teresina subdivision. And when the subdivision was originally approved in 2004, there wasn't a request for a gated entry, so there was no denial or no approval at that time for a gated entry. This shows the location, Auburn Folsom Road coming down here, and this road is not marked or labeled, but it's Cabot Stallman Road, and you go less than about 0.7 of a mile up Laird, north on Laird Road to Teresina Lane. And at the intersection here is the fire station and then the new St. Joseph Morello Church right in this area. This shows the entry, and there's an existing median on Teresina Lane, and this road here, north to south, that's Laird Road. And on either side of the entry road, which is a private road, is an open space wetland area. And you don't start getting into the first lots until you get in this far, this area here. This shows on the top proposed gate design with 3 pilasters and 2 pedestrian gates. And the gate is in this location right here, proposed gates, and as I mentioned previously, both sides have very large wetland, says wetland preservation easement, and then on this area there's a pond and water feature, and then this is Teresina Lane going in to the subdivision. This is a picture of the taken towards the west. In the middle here is the median, and the proposed gate would be approximately 52 feet east of that median on Laird Road. I'll just click to the front here. So it would be approximately 52 feet back, and from the edge of the right-of-way of Laird Road, it's approximately 175 feet back to the proposed gate. Now, some other issues that are described in the staff report. This was submitted prior to and deemed complete prior to the February 28th Board of Supervisor approval for the updated revised Granite Bay Community Plan. So the determination is that it comes under the 1989 Granite Bay Community Plan. And the language in that community plan is that gates should only be allowed if you have a significant extenuating circumstances. So that is a large part of what the debate is and was also at the MAC meeting. This was taken to the MAC meeting on April 4th, last Wednesday. And in this case, staff feels that they have made that case for an significant extenuating circumstance based on security issues at the Teresina subdivision. And the Granite Bay MAC on April 4th, Wednesday last week, voted 5-0 to support to the Planning Commission the recommendation for a gated entry, and staff is recommending approval for the gated entry. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
What are the extenuating circumstances? Significant extenuating circumstances. You said security. Describe for me what security is so significant at this rather rural subdivision that it warrants the imposition of a gate on the community.
I think some of the background is that when this was originally approved, there was no approval for lights because it's the night standards, light standards, and they didn't want to have street lights, so it's very dark. And there has been a long time to build this subdivision. Like currently now, there's about half of the lots of the 17 that were approved. There's approximately half of them have homes on them, and the other half are undeveloped, and there are plans to develop these lots. And as a result, I mean, that road doesn't really show totally what Teresina Lane is. It has another part that curves around and has a dead-end kind of cul-de-sac that goes to the west from that. And there's very secluded areas. The reports from property owners that currently live there, theft of building materials, as an example, break-ins, somebody coming in there at 2 in the morning or 12 at night, whatever, and shooting a gun off. And supposedly that feature out front has had a certain amount of attraction, curiosity, maybe people coming in there.
Isn't that true of every subdivision?
We felt that there were some unique circumstances with this subdivision.
What are they?
Some of the ones I wouldn't want to.
Certainly not lights, Roy, because you're not making the proposition that if a subdivision has no lights that they are entitled to a gate per se, are you?
No.
And we do have night sky standards in the county that they can apply and still apply even to today if security is an issue, correct?
I think we would not. We would be hesitant.
They have the right to come
They
back.
could, yes, they could.
And
but
then
I
request it the same as they could a gate.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about break-ins and theft, everybody experiences that to some degree. Have you done any studies or looked at statistics to see if they've experienced an abnormally high incident of that kind of security theft or break-in so as to warrant this kind of a response?
Well, I did recently, within the last 2 weeks, before the MAC meeting, I asked the Sheriff's Office and Amanda Rogers for some information, and actually I didn't get it till after the MAC meeting. And it did list, I just got it this week, and it did list numerous calls made to the Sheriff's Office, even somebody going into a lot that's open and parking on, that type of thing.
Yeah, but the question wasn't, was there some incident of criminal behavior or suspect behavior out there? The question was, is it different than any other area out near Teresina so as to distinguish it from their concerns? You know, do they incur this more than the next subdivision up the road?
I don't necessarily know, and there wasn't a study because, I mean, one of the closer subdivisions is Los Lagos, and they have a gate. I don't know if I could think of any subdivision that's in that immediate area, although...
Sterling Point?
What's the one on Auburn Folsom farther down that has a
Shelbourne?
gate? Yeah, Shelbourne. It
Has the gate that isn't a gate?
It's pretty much open.
Yeah. No, the question was, you said, well, there's security issues, and you cited the criminal statistics. And, again, the standard is significant extenuating circumstances. And I was wondering, well, are they incurring it more than anybody else? And apparently you don't know.
I'd say there's no study done that you asked. But one incident would be this. You have a person building a home, and this has happened in the past. They are under construction. They have a lot of construction materials there. They can safeguard that property from dawn to dusk, you could say, But when it comes to 12 midnight, 2 in the morning, what it takes is a truck to drive straight in there and load up their construction material.
I agree with your proposition, because that's true. We've all experienced that. But the question is this subdivision incurring more of that kind of conduct than anybody else in the area? Because what you said is true of everybody who builds anywhere in the rural areas, is it not?
You know, Mr.
Yeah.
No, so it's not confined just to the rural areas.
But the other part of it is I would be somewhat hesitant to go into too much detail on this, because if I tell you what these instances are, it's secondhand kind of information, whereas we had at the MAC, and I think today, individual property owners here to tell their direct experience, what happened.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is you've got a standard, special, significant, extenuating circumstances. And what I'm hearing from you and the staff are recitations of routine criminal matters and security matters that everybody shares in common in the rural area. And I'm trying to determine what sets this area off from another one. And so far I'm not hearing anything. You say, well, lights, well, they all have that problem. Dead end that goes over a hill is kind of out of sight. Well, a lot of them do that. And let's see, what else did you say? Oh, the break-ins and criminal activity. Well, we all incur that to some extent. I was just trying to see if there was something that hadn't been brought out.
Well, I think, too, they're more rural area, and also these are 4.6-acre lots, so they're bigger lots. There's more distance between what is developed and what is not developed. Now, the other thing in our...
You're not advocating gates per se on all 4.6-acre or higher lots, are you?
No.
Subdivisions.
The other thing that we're faced with is in the planning and zoning ordinance, this comes out of the circulation element currently in the 1989 plan, the Granite Bay plan, specifically the Granite Bay Community Plan. It does not define, there's no added definition really what significant extenuating circumstances are. So previously in our discussions and at the MAC, we've had people that oppose this approval of the gate say, no, you don't have them. That's not even close. And then the property owners saying, we think we do. And it's staff's view that we agree that there are significant extenuating circumstances.
Okay, well, thank you for your response.
Chris, you have a couple questions. Let me see, I guess kind of one of the things I know we've looked at before is while construction is happening,
Yes.
you know, there's a possibility you could have a temporary gate, but not a permanent gate. That would be, I don't know if you looked at that alternative or not. Did you?
I think that is a potential. That's a possible. We didn't maybe specifically look at that too much, but it was mentioned in some of the testimony, I believe, at the MAC by one of the MAC members, I believe.
Okay. Well, that's just an alternative, you know, I didn't see, and so just throwing it out here at this point in time. But also, I did visit the subdivision and drive around a little bit, and I noticed that there's a back door gate.
There's I think an EVA, emergency vehicle access way out back there.
Right. And at any rate, you know, if the permanent gate is constructed at the front and you have a back door gate, I noticed that there's a lock on that gate. Who has a key to that lock?
I would think fire, but I don't know for sure.
And so then if you have some kind of an emergency within the subdivision and South Placer Fire comes in and they focus on the emergency, then how do the residents, if they need to get out that back gate, how do they get out?
I'd also think that there's property owners would have a key, but that'd be a question. Maybe they don't.
Yeah. Well, you know, I thought of that, but, you know, I know through my many years of living that I have a drawer full of keys, and, you know, I don't know what those keys go for now. And so,
Yeah.
at any rate, you know, I just have a question, you know, if we're going to do this, you know, if there's going to be some kind of a modification to that gate so it's more current in its standards so that it'll allow people to get out if they need to. So that's just a question.
I believe, and I'm not totally sure, but I believe that that gate is there more for South Placer to get their vehicles in than, I mean, that's the intent of the EVA more so, and there's a Knox lock on there that only South Placer has a key to.
Yeah, and that's what the issue that I'm questioning about. And, you know, it's a fairly extensive road system in the subdivision, and I believe the county requires, you know, a couple ways out of a subdivision like that. So if you have a gate that people can't get out, if there's an emergency, that's just a question I have at this point. We can discuss it later.
I have a follow-up question. I also drove through the subdivision the other day. I noticed in our new Granite Bay Community Plan, there's 3 different reasons that are listed there, but we're not talking about that, and we're talking about the old one. But is there any other, I didn't get a chance to review the 89 one, is there any other sentence or anything else other than extenuating circumstances? They don't define extenuating circumstance, or there's no other sentence with it?
Well, in the 1989, that's really the only thing we have where it says gates should only be allowed if there's significant extenuating circumstances.
I think we get to
And
decide
what-
if it's significant.
Well, and then I know, but my question, and what has some of the, since I've only been on the planning commission a year, what have been some of the other decisions in this regard? Because other gates must have been thought about or discussed in the last few years under the old plan.
Well, when that plan was being upgraded or updated and revised, one of the planners did a survey, and there are currently 30 gated communities, gated subdivisions in Granite Bay. So there's various reasons. I was personally dealt with some of them, and there has been issues that were under the category of security. Now, just recently, and maybe I think you were here for that, we did the gated entry at Seymour Ranch subdivision. That was approved a while ago, and now it's being developed. There's 4 or 5 or 6 homes built there right now. And with that one, it was traffic issues, the mix of commercial traffic in those areas next to it that were brought up, and the idea that, well, during some of their construction, there was vehicles going in there, mistaking it for some cut through to some other place. And some of that was, I guess, agreed to by the Planning Commission and staff that those were significant extenuating circumstances. So it could be security, it could be traffic issues.
Okay, thank you.
Is Seymour Ranch the one behind where Wendy's was?
Yes.
Okay, I've just sort of got a comment, and Jerry, it's for probably your benefit, because I have property in Lincoln, and I do have a gate. It's a farm gate, have stock and fields and house and equipment and stuff there. And personally, anytime I've had a problem with people getting in and stuff, it's been when the gate's been open. I've never had a problem when I keep it locked, but sometimes when I leave and I'll leave the gate open and stuff, I've gone down there and I've found people that go down right in front of the house and will park there when nobody's home, and I've had people that have done drugs, alcohol and stuff, and then I've had theft, but it's always been when the gate's open. Whenever I've had it locked, I've never had a problem in all the years, other than one time I did have a concrete truck that rammed the gate, and the guy was drunk and drove down, and he was hiding out, I guess sobering up or whatever. But usually the problems with theft is when they can drive down, load stuff up, and carry it off. I've had a few times where the gate's locked and people walking up the Auburn Ravine will come into the property and stuff and be looking around, but haven't really had the theft problems. So that, I know in the past we've had issues with gates and stuff, and maybe it's just that's part of my reason. If somebody feels that they need a gate for security purposes, I personally understand.
They work.
Yeah.
We can discuss this further after we hear what everybody has to say.
Thank you, Roy. Does the applicant would like to come up, please?
Hello, my name's Tiffany Bell. I'm the managing agent for Teresina Owners Association. And we're here today to request the approval for the variance to construct the gates at the entry of Teresina. We proved to the zoning administrator, the Granite Bay MAC, the association feels that there are extenuating circumstances that require the need for the gates at the entry. And these are not only security, it's liability due to excessive trespassing, and the fact that these gates were approved and or prior approval was granted for the construction in 2007 from the planning department. It was an administrative approval. As many of you know, Teresina was developed by Granite Bay Ventures, who is no longer in existence, and is an 83-acre community consisting of 3 to 5 acre lots off Laird Road. Teresina was approved in 2004, and the first lots were sold in 2007. On May 13th, the developer submitted and obtained administrative approval by Michael Johnson of Planning for the allowance of entryway gates within the setback of Teresina Lane, which was not to exceed a maximum of 8 feet in height. From that time forward, every property within the subdivision was sold with a copy of that letter and the promise that the gates were approved and would be installed in the near future. Each owner was given a copy of the letter, and unfortunately, to the downturn of real estate market, the developer was unable to fulfill this promise, and the construction of the gates a burden was placed on the owners. Regarding the security, since I've been managing agent, every property that has begun construction has had minor to major theft. In one instance, one of the builders had installed a $4,000 olive tree in the front yard, and that evening the olive tree was removed and no longer to be seen. We have had, in the past week alone, I have personally called the sheriff 5 times for trespassing in the entryway landscaped area, which photographers are deeming their stomping grounds. On Sunday, I believe, we had trespassers out there removing planting material, and unfortunately, by the time the sheriff showed, they were no longer there. We've had constant vandalism at the entry or within the subdivision. Homeowners being accosted when walking through the development and asking non-residents to leave. As Roy had stated, there was target practice on some of the back lots, and long and short of it, it's just a constant issue. We understand. I mean, I've been around. We know during the construction period that there's theft. It happens. With the way that the market is right now, I don't know when or if some of those lots, those empty lots in the back, are going to be built. And I know that there's at least 5 of those owners that are not building due to the fact that they bought that lot with the belief that these gates were approved, that they would be installed. And these are $2 to $5+ million homes that homeowners that are starting their families there and wanted to retire there with the belief that this is going to be a gated development. And
I have a couple questions. With the design of the gates, the people that are trespassing around the entrance are still going to have access to that, right?
They will have access during the daylight hours in pedestrian areas. They can walk in. What our major issue with the trespassing is, I mean, we understand about the entry. People are going to go out there. It's marked. We have to call the sheriff. They're parking past where we're proposing to place the gates and blocking the road. It's a fire hazard. I mean, it's kind of like bumper cars trying to get through there.
People like the waterfall. They're still going to be there taking pictures.
And that's
you're going to consider them trespassing. Is that correct?
It is trespassing as it's marked It's kind of the least of our worries at this point. Our main issue is within the subdivision.
Well,
Yes.
you have people walking in the subdivision too, you're gonna, it sounds like if somebody's just walking in the subdivision, that they're being challenged by some of the residents?
No, it's when they're upon private lots. We've had a lot of instances of partying in the back lots, and a lot of homeowners walk their dogs in the evening and have felt initially felt comfortable enough to come up and speak to people on the lots and ask them to leave, and have been accosted. So what I have recommended is, you call the sheriff, have the sheriff come out, and, we're common stopping grounds for the sheriff to be out there. We've requested that they come through more often than not, and they've been very accommodating, but these things still happen.
Okay, maybe another question too, is you said that all the homeowners have been promised a gate, but it really hasn't happened, I guess, because of financial things. But if this gate is approved, why are we talking about it today?
I kind of question that myself. We had when we went to planning to get approvals for the gate, and we were told that the approval had expired. Now, the letter that I have doesn't have a date of expiration. EJ has been very helpful and accommodating, but allegedly it had expired by 2009, and then or May of 2009, and then in October of 2010, some of the gate construction requirements have changed, and that's why we have presented for a variance of these gates.
That letter that you referenced there, does it have a date on it?
May 13th, 2007. I can.
2007. No, that's okay. That's fine. I want to make sure it was the date that you had earlier said, 2007.
Yes.
Okay. We can probably get clarification on that for you as the discussion ensues here.
I can hand you the copy of the copy that we have.
No, as far as your question about the expiration,
Oh, okay.
yeah, we'll make sure that we get a more clarification on that.
Yeah, whether the original approval was through an administrative approval through the county, and by ordinance, those approvals are good for 2 years. And so what the applicant would have had to do is actually get a building permit issued and construct the gate. And that didn't happen during the 2-year time frame. And just by ordinance, whether there's a condition or not, it expires.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other?
Before you sit down, I have a question. What differentiates Teresina from any other subdivision in that area
I believe
with respect to security and all the issues that you've raised?
Laird Road is a somewhat rural road. One of the main issues, I think, or main draws for trespassers, et cetera, is the entryway. The developer put in, I believe, about $1 million entryway, and it really stands out. It has the two ponds that cascade into each other, vineyards or grapevines, etc. It really draws the eye, and you know that there's going to be some very high-end homes in there. They built it with, like, as I said, with the belief that they would be gated also. And they really marketed it in that sense. I don't believe that.
So the entryway is one.
I believe that the darkness of the development, it is very quiet, very dark out there.
Which is a hallmark of rural construction.
Yes, and it was one of the requirements because of the wetlands that we have no bright lights, etc., out there, just to preserve the wetland community, or the aspect of the wetlands. They have to be low glare, etc. And I don't see that there is another development out there that is comparable to Teresina Farthest down is Loomis Hills, and they're gated.
Yeah, that's in Loomis,
Well, this is Loomis also.
town.
I know. And Town of Loomis never says yes to gates, but I mean, they're gated too. So, I mean, if you want to ask for apples to, that's as close as I can see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
All right. Anybody from the public would like to come up and speak about this?
Say it louder. Your microphone.
My name is Hugh Smith. I'm a 20-year resident of Granite Bay, and I'll be presenting a letter written by Mayor Furlow, who is also a 16-year resident of Granite Bay. And I have copies of the letter for the board and copies of the statistical data attached to the letter for each one of you that answers some of your questions. Reading now from Merle's letter, he states, "I'd like to state my opposition to this application for the following reasons. Number one, the Granite Bay Community Plan of '89 does not allow gates unless there are significant extenuating circumstances. In the past, gates have generally been allowed where there are large adjacent traffic generators, such as schools and churches, where the entrance is on a major arterial road, or where there are adjacent commercial land uses. The location of Teresina Subdivision does not meet any of these criteria. Number two, the applicant testified at the zoning administrator's hearing on the 12th of February and at the MAC meeting on the 4th of April that their main concern was security. The applicant stated there was vandalism, thefts, and burglaries during construction, as well as frequent disturbances of the peace. The attached report from the Sheriff's Crime Database, which I just provided you, from the period of January 2008 to the current date indicate no crimes within the Teresina subdivision. The Placer County Sheriff's Office has provided a report of calls, which I've provided you with, for service within the last 9 months. A majority of the calls, 7, were for issues that would have occurred with or without gates, such as false burglary alarms, telephone harassment, or events occurring outside of where the gates are proposed. The remaining 3 calls were requests for extra patrols where the deputies found no issues. The Loomis Sheriff Substation reports that the Sheriff's Office has no documentary evidence of crime problems in the vicinity of Teresina Subdivision. The applicant's assertion of crime and security issues seems to be inflated. County staff's recommendation for approval was based on the assertion of a security issue and not the proof of a security issue. Staff's recommendation appears to be based on a false premise. If there is a crime issue in the Teresina subdivision, then it should be incumbent upon the applicant to provide verifiable documentary evidence to substantiate it. Number 3, the applicant stated that when the various owners purchased their lots, the seller told them that gates were approved. The owners feel like they have been deceived, and to deny them gates at this point would be unjust. Attached is a report extracted from the information of the county recorder's office, which you have, that shows the chain of title on each parcel since it was subdivided. There are 17 buildable parcels within the subdivision. Current ownership of 13 of those parcels was acquired either before the gates were approved in May of '07 or after the 2-year expiration of that approval. The remaining 4 could have obtained an extension to the administrative approval, but for whatever reason did not. It is unfortunate that some of these people have been deceived. The remedy is against the deceptive sellers. We should not make exceptions to the community plan as a means to resolve issues between private parties or compensate for their lack of administrative diligence. Number 4, the Teresina subdivision is in a current state of build-out. Due to the adverse conditions in the larger economy, build-out is taking longer than usual. The security concerns will probably diminish once the track is fully built. Gates seem to be a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And finally, number 5, the applicant seems to feel that they are entitled to gates because they were erroneously approved at one time. The original conditions of approval on this project did not allow gates. The county used a flawed administrative process that permitted no public comment or appeal in order to issue the administrative approval for the gates. The prior administrative approval does not seem proper and should have no bearing on the current application. I urge you to deny this application. It is based on false premise and against the spirit of both the old and the new community plans. Thank you for your time. Signed, Merle Furlow.
Thank you. How many others are wanting to speak on this issue? All right. Somebody like to come forward then, please?
Hi, my name is Brent Meanier. I own lot 14. I'm actually probably one of the residents that has called the Placer County Sheriff's Department numerous times. The security issues are realistic. I mean, everything from beer bottles, guns going off to, I mean, to answer your question, Jerry, yeah, it does incur a lot of criminal activity out there. They've got, you know, these homes that are developed and then also unprotected. There's not a farmer with a shotgun out there to, you know, say you're not going to drive up his yard. In regards to the crime statistics from Placer County, in the past 6 to 9 months, they've been dumping their records, backlogs, etc., into what's called crimemappers.com. I'm sure that's where most of the information's been coming from. The lady in records, she's told me that we're only going to get what we get because we're held hostage to somebody in data entry. As calls come in, that data entry person can't get all the previous records uploaded to that system. I've been on it. I've gone as far back to '04 for that area. There's only 6 reports. I don't know how they came across the phone call records. I have Placer County Sheriff's Department on speed dial. We have a baby on the way in June. Really, with the amount of construction and the open lots out there, it's bad. You know, they have probably about 4 or 5 other gated communities or personal properties on Laird Road that if you just drive by, you can see them. I know that an aesthetic version was talked about. This was being bad for Laird Road's rural vision, but every landowner's got a gate out there, you know, and we just happen to be 17 of them with easy access for criminal activity. And I urge this panel to really take this into consideration. It is incurring far more criminal activity than just some street that's full of houses in Roseville. And, you know, the people can drive down there at any hours of the night. I play hockey at Skate Town in Roseville, some of the last season we've had games after about 10:45, so I get home at about 1 a.m. I've seen cars driving through. One time I saw a van literally rush out of the construction across the street from our house. We've got a family that just moved in next door. They have 2 little girls as well. You know, our house was broken into right when the day we were going to move into it. I left at 10 p.m. after cutting stone in the backyard, and the alarm went off at 11. It wasn't hooked up to the phone line at that time because we just purchased it 3 weeks before, and show up the next day and water heaters are ripped out, and you know, the next lot, Tom Perkins' lot, was full of water. I mean, this is, you know, it's not a farmland that has a gate around it. And in regards to the new Granite Bay Community Plan, I just can't see how lawful that is to make a private landowner have to allow pedestrian access to their property that they're trying to gate in the first place. I noticed you said that you had property in Lincoln. I mean, that doesn't really make sense to me. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, before you sit down, what I was trying to determine was what distinguishes this subdivision from either actual other subdivisions in the general area, and I live in that general area, and I hear all the same things you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Or B, hypothetical subdivisions that may be placed next door to you. And the thing is this, we set, either intentionally or unintentionally, some sort of a precedence here. Maybe not legal, but certainly moral.
Right.
And when we grant a gate for you, I can almost guarantee you that the next subdivision will be in and wanting the same thing. Help me, how do I distinguish? What is it makes your subdivision different so that we meet the standard, which was significant extenuating circumstances? Well, I've heard people come in when we're having construction and steal things. Yeah, well, welcome to the club. You know, the subdivision is dark. Yeah, that's why people want to live in the rural area. Mm-hmm. I just haven't heard what makes this one so significantly different so as to justify this kind of an imposition. That's where I'm coming from.
Sure, and I understand that, and that's why I tried to do the necessary research to be able to provide that for the panel, but it's not there. I mean, I've exhausted every opportunity. Like I said, I don't know how certain other records were obtained, and you know, I don't want to get into that discussion, but I mean, I've gone to the mat with several, you know, even the sheriffs that pulled over, or when I came home about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they had a white van parked out in the lot next to us, and guns were drawn. 5 cop cars were called. Yeah, no. They were potentially breaking into houses, siphoning gas out of cars parked out in the front of the neighborhood. I mean, it just seems to me that, you know, living in the area since 1982, I can see that whole area, you know, it's just different. You drive by it, you know, I wouldn't assume to try and think like a robber, but I guess that's how you kind of have to envision security. And, you know, if you were to drive by any of the 15 lots right before the actual entrance of Teresina, I think you'd drive right by those. I think you would be a little weary of going up to an actual residence parked off a layered road that looks like people actually live there. Our development, you know, it's still growing, so we have that kind of nice and abandoned look, and it's just, with this economy, you know, and it's just a spectacle. So
Temporary gates resolve the issue.
I don't believe so. I think that, you know, I have my escrow states that, you know, there was a special assessment for the HOA fees to provide those gates, which is one of the reasons we went through and signed the contract. I've actually brought the flyer for our house that says Teresina Private Estates. Now, granted, that was in 2008, and I understand, but, you know, the 2-year subject to build kind of rule, if it's approved once, is it approved? So thank you for your consideration. And
Thank you. Next. Don't be bashful.
Hi, my name is Galina, and we are living in a lot 10. And actually, I'm probably the one who experienced more than anybody else security issue. So which happened, we live like right at the end, and we have 3 empty lots next to us. So I understand when we built during construction, we had a problem, like everyone else probably, you know, people are up in, just some material was gone, but it was okay. But now when we moved in, actually, and we went on vacation, and house was finished, and we were on a cruise in Mediterranean, nobody can actually even get hold of us, and our neighbor behind us, they called, I guess Ray, right? They called us that some car, and the house is finished, on our backyard, just kind of come at 2 o'clock, at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we did install security issue. And besides that, we have a person who actually was sleeping outside the house for 2 weeks before we even moved in. And she told me, yes, at 2 o'clock, there is a red truck. At 3 o'clock, there is a white truck coming in the middle of the night. And after that, kind of, we moved the furniture, and we were still living in our old house, and we have those now alarm, and it wasn't a false alarm because police would come and the door was open. Actually, I told them, oh, maybe it's a false alarm. And they told me not, because it was actually already a motion detector inside the house. And front window was open now. So finally we moved in. Now we are in for like a year. And what happened, this is really bad. At the end, we have this empty cul-de-sac, which has 3 empty lots. And people drive by, and because I am the only one, like, we don't have close by neighbor because our lot is kind of like 500 feet long. And so the closest neighbor is across, like, quite far, and nobody like on the left side. And so this empty lot, and we're right in the middle of like a cul-de-sac. And so people drive by, we can see everybody, and they always come around 10 o'clock because I can see pretty much everybody driving in, we're in the middle. And they go right in this empty lot. And I don't know, they spend there half an hour, and come back. Few times I try to call police. The problem is by the time they come, sheriff, it just takes them like, I don't know, half an hour, and by the time people are gone. Once actually I could hear a gun shot, and like normally it's one car come, and another car would come, and people just jump from one car to another car. Even during the daytime, you can see one car come, 15 minutes later, another one. And they go on this cul-de-sac, and they just go from one car to another. I mean, which kind of activity you can conduct in a private area? And it's day after day, night after night. Like I talked to a neighbor, actually I was like with a flashlight every night because we have a porch facing that direction, and those cars are just like 10 o'clock, 10:30, boom, coming in, going in a cul-de-sac, half an hour later, getting out. You can hear a noise there, and of course, you know, I'm afraid to go there. And because once you get in a cul-de-sac, you know, they can basically do anything to you. It's kind of hard to get out. It's like one way out, and it's not far from our house, but still. And again, when we called sheriff, few times they came, and I talked to them numerous times. They would probably know Cliff Hagan, it's my husband, and I explained to them, we always have those guys, you know, and yeah, I could call them, but the problem is, again, it takes so long to get for a sheriff, so those people are gone. And I told them many times, and you can tell I talked to them many times. I don't know what the record is, but if you talk to a few of sheriffs, they would know my name, and I always stop them when they come and tell, you know what, we have those people coming. Once, actually, it wasn't even such a long time ago, and I get up in the morning, and all our front yard, and the trees are, I don't know, right under bedroom door, was all in a toilet paper. Yeah, it is a joke, but you know which kind of joke it is. If all your front yard is in a toilet paper. And we went to bed at 1 o'clock, so somebody came at night. Next day, we have security light, motion detector, and one is actually right next to our bedroom window, I mean right on it. And we lived there for a year and never came once. But another day, and it was in the middle of the night, this light started flashing. And I was scared enough to get outside, and flash few times, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, I'd stop, I can hear some noise. And actually this was a day when it was a robbery in a subdivision. So somebody came, and construction, right? We have some construction site, and actually police arrest few people. But if somebody comes to your backyard right next to your window, it's kind of different story now, as this is not something I made up. So I don't know how much more evidence, you need, and how long it take for those lots to finish. So actually, when something was stolen from my construction, I didn't report police. I know it's a common thing. So it wasn't concern to me. You have to be kind of realize that it can be people who work there. We have lots of those stuff. But now when we live in, this is what it is. And I really would like to know which kind of activity is in this little cul-de-sac. Another day, which is in the summertime, it's even worse. We have this guy who actually probably live in the area. I don't know, in his 50, 60, huge big guy. And every second night, he come in his quad, half naked, just in his shorts, and cruising around in a whole speed in a quad. And it's with full blown speed. And a lot of times those bike would just come in, drive around, get back, and it is a full blown speed coming right into our house. You have car cruising around, but the worst thing is those quad, and especially when you see half-naked people driving around, and it's every night he goes in, and because we have this green belt, he just considered it just kind of nice place to go for a cruise on a quad, and it just, not only it's kind of scary to look at it, but like you tell, we have kids.
Is the quad coming in through the entrance?
Yes. They just think it's kind of like a drive. People with the horses come, horses doesn't buy, but quad is.
The horses come through the trails. The quads come through the trails too, do they not?
Yeah, but you know what? If it's a private road and he's driving with a full-blown speed, if you would look on a guy, you would, I don't know, maybe to you it wouldn't be scary. To me it is. When somebody every night at 6 o'clock, it's just you can almost time your clock at it. You know what? I don't think it's a private road. And, if I want just to relax, I don't want to hear the quad noise around. And lots of bikers, just kind of cruising around. So I don't know if it's, personally, I haven't lived in a subdivision. I don't know if we have more. I think we do. I live in Carmichael in a really big kind of property, really old area. We never locked our house once. For 7 years, we didn't have a key. Here, I have security. I installed security camera now all over. Just right after this toilet paper issue, I have 7 or 8 security cameras all over my house now. I mean, it's just like you living. You never know what happened to you every time. And for 7 years, I didn't have a key in my house. So I am not one of those person who really like to lock. In this case, I do now. I just have no choice. Thank you. Have any question?
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Drew Witters. I'm an attorney. I represent 3 of the people who purchased lots in Teresina in a lawsuit that was filed in Placer County Superior Court. Those homeowners are, lot purchasers are Daniel Wilcoxon, Dan Griffin, and Deborah Griffin. The basis of the lawsuit is that those persons would not have purchased properties at Teresina Estates but for the fact that it was represented to them that this was a gate-approved subdivision. Their contracts actually specifically stated that the subdivision has been approved by the county to install a gate at the entrance. Now, I understand that the basis for that representation was the administrative approval in 2007, which is apparently because of the negligence of the developer lapsed. Currently, the lawsuit that I filed I just filed it. I haven't pursued it at all. The reason being I'm awaiting the impressive efforts of the homeowners to get the gates reapproved at Teresina Estates and hoping that occurs. If the gates are reapproved, I think there wouldn't be much left of the lawsuits, and that would likely be mostly the end of them. If they're not, it seems to me that the sole recourse for the homeowners at Teresina Estates who purchased based on the representation that it was a gate-approved community would be to file civil lawsuits themselves. And to me that seems like a waste of Placer County resources when all they're asking is to have the gates reapproved that were previously approved in 2007. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. I don't know why this thing's not working. Anyway, my button's not working, so I'll try and speak up.
Okay.
The lawsuit, who's it against?
It's against Granite Bay. The real estate agents of those purchasers, and Granite Bay Ventures. I'm sorry, Granite Bay Ventures, and I can pull the loss.
Is the county being sued in this?
No, the county is not being sued.
Good morning. My name is Ray Madison. We're property owners in Teresina. We bought our lot in July of '08, and the information provided by both the developer, Granite Bay Ventures, and the real estate broker about a gated entry being approved was critical to our decision to buy and to how much we paid for the lot. We counted on that, and we would not have made the offer, we would not have built. We might not even be in Placer County if it weren't for the gate being approved. We have had security issues at our home. We put up perimeter fencing with a gated entry, and in spite of that, we had someone break into the home, and we're in the process of carting off with quite a bit of pool equipment. When my wife arrived at 8 o'clock, she found the pool draining down into the backyard, and if that had been allowed to happen all the way, it would have caused $40,000, $50,000 worth of damage. The church is not an insignificant issue. Sunday morning, there's a steady stream of cars going up from Joseph Morello Church up to Loomis, and some portion of those drive into Teresina every Sunday morning after every Mass. And it's frequently difficult for us even to get into not only to the development, but to our home. And that, yes, it's a half a mile away, but every person that drives by there, some portion of them stop into Teresina. Appreciate your consideration. Any questions?
I have one question. You say your wife saw the people that were stealing the pool equipment?
She didn't see them. They evidently came, jumped over the gate, and were in the process of tearing it apart. They got evidently scared away by operating in a room full of electric motors when they found themselves ankle deep in water from the pool draining into the room. So when she showed up at 8 o'clock, and we believe it started around 6 because of the timers being off, they had already gone.
Oh.
They also accessed our electrical doors, a huge electrical room. Those doors were open. I don't know if they were going to attempt to pull wires. I found debris, evidence of people sleeping in our backyard.
Could you come up, please, and tell us who you are?
Okay, because
this is my wife, Sarah.
I'm Sarah Madison. Yeah, I showed up and the pool doors were open on the other side of the house. Luckily, the neighbor lived there. Our huge electrical doors were wide open. There's extensive, really high dollar wiring that's happened at the house. I've also found evidence of people either camping out or sleeping in our backyard, leaving debris there, using our gas lighter to light our outdoor fire pit. We haven't yet moved in because we're finishing our punch list. I don't think you realize that with the downturn of the economy, we really faced several years of these additional large lots being built out. And I understand the Granite Bay Planning's interest in keeping this rural, but I really have strong feelings about you being able to live your lives, perhaps not wanting to be in a gated community, but us making our decisions, wanting to be part of a gated community for many reasons. I don't wander down. I've driven all over in this rural area, and I find private signs. I find no trespassing signs. And my sense of community doesn't come from these people that wander into our development, or if I wander down your lane. That doesn't establish a ground for community sense. That happens through church, civic organizations, all kinds of activities, not in a neighborhood. I don't find that in any neighborhood I could go into that Mrs. Smith is going to come out and invite me in for a cup of coffee and we're going to really develop a friendship. I understand it's nice to see people's development, but we've chosen and made our decisions based on privacy, security, our equity, our investment. And to say that everybody should just live wide open lives, I think that that's really to be challenged. You know, Clos de Lac residents, Shelbourne, Los Lagos, and many that are not on huge major roads, it's proven statistically that they have a greater sense of security and much less crime. To live like Galena does, going out every night, seeing flashlights and cars pull in and gangs hanging out in the other cul-de-sac, it's really terrifying. You know, we have a notable athletic person that lives in our development formerly. He was broken into regularly. And his clout, he had sheriffs sitting in that other adjacent cul-de-sac that's not yet developed and who knows how long to be developed, for his security. You know, he petitioned Tiffany of the Bell Association Management weekly for that gate. You know, certain people lead high-profile lives, my husband being one of them. And again, we made our decision based on this. And I respect that these people who have rural developments and rural country lanes don't want to live in a gated community. But again, I don't think that this community sense that these people feel that we are challenging is very real. You know, if we make acquaintances, then yes, you're invited over. But to say that you have to drive into everybody's development to have a sense of community, I find really ridiculous.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jane Negri, and I have lived at 4502 Olive Ranch Road for 39 years. And I do want to express my concern about this project that was approved with no gates, and nothing has changed in the area to warrant a gate at this time. There isn't a school in the area. The church is really located a long ways away from this, and there might be a few people sightseeing, but I can't imagine a steady stream coming on Sunday. There is not a shopping center in the area. The area is exactly the same as when this original plan was approved. And I'm sorry that these homeowners didn't do their due diligence. When they moved into the area, it was under the Granite Bay Community Plan at that time. And the request for gates is in conflict with the goals of our community plan. Our main goal is to preserve and protect the unique rural character of the community and maintain the identity of Granite Bay as a scenic, tranquil, family-oriented, rural residential community compatible with the area's physical constraints and natural features. The addition of an 8 to 11-foot gate and 10-foot high pillars is not in keeping with the surrounding homes. This is a very rural area, and these added structures will stand out and separate this subdivision from the rest of the area. One of the purposes of the circulation element, as stated on page 1, Exhibit B in the 2005 update, is to retain and enhance the rural and scenic qualities of the area. This addition does neither. It is in visual opposition to the rural area, and it will detract from the natural scenic beauty of Laird Road. The policy and the circulation element that directly addresses this is number 15 on page 3 of the 2005 update. It states, gated subdivisions shall not be allowed unless there are significant extenuating circumstances. There are no extenuating circumstances that make it necessary for this subdivision to add gates after their plan was already approved without gates. You have heard the residents cite that safety is their main reason. Yet, when looking at the crime statistics and the crime reports from Placer County, they don't back this up. And that's a real question to me, that if there are all these crimes, why aren't they recorded? And as per Merrill's letter, he went over and over to the Sheriff's Department and went through records, and he found nothing recorded there. So that's a big concern for me, to think this is going to be approved on records that don't seem to exist. And gates do not guarantee safety. My daughter lives in a gated community in Granite Bay, and several years ago they've had many break-ins. They've had cars vandalized parked on the streets, and there are even reports of crimes in Los Lagos, and they have a guard by their gate. So gates don't guarantee your safety. it's easy to get into a gated community. All you have to do is follow a car that goes through and you're in. And if there are teenagers or children that live in this area, the gate code will soon be well known to all the high school kids in the area. So a gate does not protect you. It's a symbol that perhaps you feel safer because it's there, but it really doesn't give you added support. And I thank you for supporting our Granite Bay community plan. The goals of our new plan haven't changed from the old plan. Our goal is that we want to remain rural and open, and the definition of rural is open land, more room, of or relating to the country people, or life, or agriculture. That defines rural. And gates are not rural. They make an area exclusive. So I would appreciate you supporting our Granite Bay community plan again and denying these add-on gates. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Sandy Harris. I live at 5911 Reba Drive, Granite Bay. I've been there about 37 years. It's a private community with private roads, 2 private bridges. We do not have gates. We do not have outdoor lighting, and it's pretty near this subdivision. This project was approved in 2004, and I went to all the hearings on it, and it was approved without gates for a reason. They knew that the community didn't approve of gates, didn't want them, and so they didn't even try to get them in at that time. In February, a hearing was held at the zoning administrator for a gated entrance. And for that hearing, there was a staff report, and it noted that an administrative approval had allowed a gated entry with the expiration date of 2009. And there were many of us at that hearing, and we were totally surprised to hear that gates had even been approved for that subdivision. So, and then the zoning administrator went ahead and approved the gates based on the security issues. So after the hearing, a number of us who were there from the Granite Bay Community Association asked to meet with the planning director and get some explanation of what an administrative approval is and why was it used to approve gates, a very contentious issue in Granite Bay. And afterwards, I sent a letter to the director asking for a written response to a number of the questions, and I've included that handout. The response referred to 17.60.105, defining administrative approvals, and it was explained that this method does not require a public hearing, as it is an administrative decision of the planning director. A public notice is posted on the project site, but no other notification is required. The director also noted that after reviewing the issue, he determined that an administrative approval process was not appropriate for this type of request, and it should be a variance process to provide for greater public notification and public involvement. The association reviewed section 176105, which I've provided a copy of, and we determined that gates aren't even covered in that section, and a flawed process was used to grant these gates by that process. Also, Condition 73 of the Teresina project approved in 2004 clearly states, quote, "No controlled access gates are approved as part of this project," and I've included a copy of that. And the Granite Bay Community Plan clearly states that gated subdivisions shall not be allowed unless there are extenuating circumstances. Based on this information, the Community Association felt strongly that the gates had been inappropriately approved in 2007 and 2012. And on February 26, we filed an appeal and paid a $520 filing fee, which I've provided a copy of. Shortly after the appeal was filed, staff realized that the project's conditions of approval, specifically Condition 73, disallows controlled access gates in this subdivision, and the authority to modify conditions of approval for subdivisions follows under the purview of the Planning Commission, not the zoning administrator. In preparation for this hearing, I contacted the Sheriff's Office and to verify some of the statements made at the hearing and at the MAC meeting later. I was referred to crimemapping.com for incident reports and was assured that these are updated regularly. And I found for the past 3 years there are no reported incidents in Teresina, and I've included a copy of that. And I also want to comment that I volunteered at the Sheriff's Department for a couple years, and I got calls regularly from people who had criminal incidents on their property. And the first thing they would do at the direction of their insurance company was to call for a sheriff's report number because they couldn't file a claim for damages or compensation unless they had a report number. So I haven't seen any of those for this project. The homeowners might have been misled about the gates, but the records show that 13 of the 17 parcels were acquired before gates were approved or after the 2-year expiration of the approval. And this information is available to those who purchased the property. Perhaps their recourse should be with the seller for clarification and resolution. The gates are inconsistent with the goals and policies of the 1989 Granite Bay Community Plan. An applicant has not provided evidence into the record that significant extenuating circumstances exist as they relate to security issues, and the proposal is inconsistent with the character of the immediate neighborhood. It should also be noted that there are horse trails and public access to the development, and the pedestrian gates that I've seen the drawing of don't seem to be designed to allow horses to even get in there. They're part of a wall. And I don't know, we had a horse, and I don't think he would have been too excited about trying to lead him through something like that. I think most horses are kind of spooky. So I ask you to please deny this request on the basis that there are no provable extenuating circumstances. We've seen no evidence of it. Thank you.
Mr. Sandy, I think it's in your paperwork here, but I just want to be clear. You said that this was approved administratively in 2012?
207.
And then there was an appeal, and that's why we're here
No, it
today?
wasn't an appeal. After it expired, evidently, when they wanted to do something about getting the gates installed, they had to go back through the zoning administrator. And even that was determined to be an improper venue to do this. So this whole thing has been kind of messy, I think.
Well, it expired in 2009, is what we're hearing.
Yeah, it was
And
granted in
so
2007.
what happened in 2012 other than the hearing we're in right now?
No, that was in February of 2012. They had a hearing before the zoning administrator, and at that time he went ahead and approved them too, based on the hearsay that he was hearing from the members of the people who were there.
You say it was approved in 2012 by the zoning administrator?
Inappropriately. Then that got rescinded, and they returned our filing fee and said that it had to go to the Planning Commission because the original condition said that no gates were allowed on this project, and that wasn't the proper venue to hear it. And
So
it wasn't proper for the administrative approval either.
So it was rescinded by the planning department, is what you're saying, in 2012?
I just know that we got our check back and we were given a notice that there would be a hearing today.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Patricia McKinney, and I've lived in Granite Bay for 31 years now. And of course, I am here to, in support of our plan, which is one of the reasons that Granite Bay is so appealing to so many people. I was going to read you the parts of the plan again that say no gates, but instead I'd just like to make a couple of comments. I really have a lot of sympathy for those who have the concerns of security, and we all have those same concerns. I live on a private road, a dead end, and we don't have a gate. People who live on that area, if they wish to have their own gate and their yards or their properties fenced, they have that right. But when I look at this plan and I see where the gates are, I have to ask this question. I know that it's going to keep cars from coming in and out, but I know about the kinds of mischief that can happen. Unless you build a wall around the entire thing, how are you going to keep kids out from coming in from other areas, from people who are determined to do mischief, from coming in from other areas? It's just mind-boggling to me that you think a gate is going to stop all crime. We all face this same kind of situation. So, that's just my comment. Thank you.
My name is Dale Munson. I live on Itchy Acres in Granite Bay for 27 years. I'm here to support the Granite Bay Community Plan. I was a member of the committee that reworded it. I think gates are a little overrated, and I have a farm gate myself. I've not had a problem, but one of the earlier presenters here has an excellent gate and steel fencing around it. And within the last few months, he had a group come up to that gate. It was locked and closed. They went over the fence next to the gate, went back to his barn and shop 200 feet back, took the wheelbarrow out of his shop and filled it full of all of his hand tools and everything of value out of his shop, and wheeled the wheelbarrow back to this wonderful gate and passed all of that material over the fence to a car waiting and drove away and left the wheelbarrow right at the gate. So his feeling and my feeling are that the gates are overrated. I think there's some other solutions. Nobody's talked to solutions. I'm very sympathetic to these folks, and I talked to one of them earlier. I told them before we paved our road, we had people camping there. And if you've had to walk a half mile through cars because there was a rock concert on the property next door to you, and you could not get to your property within a half mile because of probably 500 to 1,000 kids having a rock concert on the lot next to you, not only making love in front of your front door and picked up the beer cans on your own property, then you really know what it is to live in rural Placer County. And I have. I think there's some other solutions. I think we ought to be thinking and talking about temporary gates. That's been mentioned. I think it's a good one. Cameras. I know in Shelbourne, I have good friends that live in Shelbourne, and they gave up on gates, but they had cameras for a while, and they may still have cameras at that gate. Anyone can drive into Shelbourne at this time for any reason. Gates cut out hikers, joggers, bicyclists, kids, and that's why the community plan has been written as such. Cameras are personal gates. Many of us have personal gates, farm gates, as you talk. They're helpful. They're helpful. They aren't a complete answer to the security problem that we all have in rural Placer County. And there's private security. That's been mentioned too. It might be even cheaper for these folks to have some private security until it's built out. I think a big part of the problem is when you're not built out, there's construction going on, then it's a not natural place for thievery. And I think some of these solutions could be talked about even here today. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Back to the applicant. Sure.
It's the association.
Come on up,
I
please.
just wanted to clarify, regarding the conditions of approval, when I came in as the association manager, I was giving the administrative approval from 2007, and also what happened after that time is the developer has subsequently gone bankrupt. Once the developer's last lot went through short sale, the association took great pains to assess a special assessment with the belief that gates were approved, and that's when and took great pains to design a gate that would incorporate the landscaping that was installed in the entryway with the ruins, etc., and put it back 175 feet from Lair Road in order so it wasn't a visual obstruction from the natural scenery of Laird Road and to look out of place. We really wanted to make sure that it all kind of blended in. We've gone to we've worked with planning on, I've personally gone to 12 meetings with planning department trying to work through this. We went to the zoning, or to get a zoning approval as we were instructed that needed to be done. We were given last minute notice to go to the Granite Bay MAC to receive approval, which we did. We've really jumped through every hoop that we possibly could to get these approvals so we could proceed, and each homeowner was given what they had been promised, and that's, I understand Ms. Harris and everybody's feelings with trying to keep the Granite Bay community aspect. Putting gates on front of each property kind of ruins the whole development's community aspect. That you're just kind of making a big wall around each home, and nobody's out in their courts, having a glass of wine or playing with the kids, etc. And I think that that's what they really want to keep, is to have the security, but also have that community feel, with the equestrian access, the equestrian trails are still open outside of the gates. The paths start at the landscaping, so we're not trying to hinder any of that also. So I just wanted to kind of clarify.
I have a couple of questions. I guess we're down to the part where the developer gets a chance to answer questions, that kind of stuff. We're through with the public comment?
Yes.
Okay. Let me say I have an impression, I guess, that, when I drove by the subdivision, there's a very beautiful fountain running in the front of it, and it's pretty upscale. And I heard a lot of problems with people that type of thing, if you're a photographer and you're looking for something you want to take a picture of, then I was a little bit puzzled why there would be an adverse feeling to the extent that you're going to call the sheriff if somebody's taking a picture of the fountain that you developed in front of the subdivision.
I was not part of the construction or development of the subdivision, but our main issue with that is it's a liability. It's private property. At Wexford, you cannot go within the I'm part of Tree Lake Village. I pay into the master and have that allegedly gives us access to all the lakes. I personally cannot go into Wexford and go visit any of the lakes within the subdivision, take pictures, but it's private property. Their property lines go into those lakes, and it's trespassing, and the sheriff is called all the time.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering about. You built a beautiful fountain, and it's right along the main road, and how would somebody even think there was anything wrong with stopping and taking a picture of the fountain? So that kind of bothers me. Maybe it's kind of an attitudinal thing. And then the other question that I heard a lot of discussion about is confrontation, where you have somebody that inadvertently is walking on the road in the subdivision, and neighbors like to do that. People like to get out and walk, and where you have a lot of beautiful homes being built, people like to walk around and see them. They're really not there for any mischief or anything, but if anybody walks in that subdivision and they're confronted, it seems like that's a stay out of my space type of an attitude, which kind of bothersome.
I think you misunderstood. What the confrontation is parking on private lots and blocking the road, and it's yes, we've had many issues where at the narrowest part of the entryway, where if they're parked on both sides, you really can't, if you have a big truck, you can't get through. The confrontations are more on the private lots. It's not walking through the development.
Oh, I heard you say
When homeowners have been walking through, there's been trespassers on private properties, driving in, parking on the lots, and they've attempted to kindly ask them to leave, and they've been accosted. It's when the homeowners have been walking through and they've noticed this, and so they're not feeling safe enough to walk. I know several of the homeowners are not feeling comfortable walking without, wives not walking without their husbands if it's close to dusk, and because of these issues.
Well, I wonder why confrontations, because, the logic of the situation, if you're not feeling comfortable with somebody that's there, then, and the fact that there's limited numbers of reports, then, you back off and call the sheriff, have the sheriff deal with them, and apparently that's not happening on a regular.
Well, and that's a misnomer, because it is happening. Initially we just most of the homeowners, they just wanted to be kind and kindly ask somebody to leave, feeling that it is a community.
Off, right?
But I contacted the sheriff's department also, and I'm not. They trying to get the records of all my calls at least, and they did not show one. I made her go back as far as 2004. I also. I didn't bring the sheriff's report, but we've had the transformer and lighting stolen out at the entryway several times. There's a pump station, a little pump house out there that's been broken into twice, and all the copper wires stolen from there. We've had to file insurance claims, and they did not have those records on file at the sheriff's department also. So I think that.
Well, I hear those concerns, but let me just rural living, I have some relatives, my daughter and son-in-law, that are farmers, and they have stationary pumps to pump water to their fields. They have diesel tanks, and, predatory people come out to the country, and that's part of country living, where you're going to have people that want to, if they're after wire, it happens, and it happens to everybody out there. It's not necessarily unique to this subdivision. So, and then another question, one of the testifiers said that if you live in a cul-de-sac, it's hard to get out. And I really am troubled by the fact that you want to install a gate at the front to make sure that you're walled in, though you don't really have a wall, because somebody else was saying that people can come in from all kinds of directions, and you're probably not going to be able to eliminate a lot of the people that really want to get in there. But then when you don't have a safe exit in the event that your front entrance is blocked off, I guess I'm troubled why that wasn't part of the consideration.
There are courts at the end, and there is an EVA access that is for fire
to get
entry.
in, but not for people to get out.
The gates are set up that if there is any issues, it's clickless. It will be clickless entry, battery backup. If electricity goes out, the gates will automatically open, or if there's any power surge or shortage, the gates will automatically open. Homeowners have their keyless entry, and the exit gates automatically open upon the loop, crossing over the loop sensor. So it's really, they're not inhibiting their.
It may be a remote opportunity, remote challenge, but in the event that fire equipment or whatever else is blocking that road and people need to get out of the neighborhood,
it would be the
they
same
need the back
way.
entrance, and that's
it would
really
be the same way either way. And the association, or the development was set up and approved the fire, and I believe that Mr. Moss attests to this, the fire is the only one that has the access to the Knox lock.
right.
And if we,
to me, that's a problem. If somebody needs to get out that gate, then how are they going to do it?
that's South Placer standards. That was set by South Placer Fire Department.
Well, I hear that, but now I think there's more modern designs that would allow everybody to get out the gate but keep the gate there. And that's what my question is. Why isn't that part of the consideration here?
It was part of the approvals to have that as it is with the gate, and and the key, the Knox lock keys.
Okay,
So
I'm hearing that, but
because we don't see that there really is an issue. Otherwise, it would be no different.
well, I'm just letting you know I think that's an issue.
Any other questions? Discussion time? Roy? Oh, one more?
Good morning, members of the commission. My name is Tom Perkins. I'm a property owner in Teresina Estates, actually lot 15, which as you come in the development, you'd be the first lot on the right. And I've never called an emergency out there. I've worked in emergency services for many, many, many years and tend to handle it locally on my own when I have issues out there. I have not started construction yet. One of my biggest concerns is all the problems that we're facing out there. And I live just west of there in a gated development, and I have never seen as many people coming through and as many issues as in this development before I've even moved in. Where I live currently, I talked to one of the Placer County sheriffs the other day. I've been there 8 years, and he said he's had 2 incidents of any type of burglary or break-in. We've had multiple out there. And why it's not being addressed through the 911 system, I'm curious as to that, because I know my neighbors called me many, many times about people on my property that are accessing it, that are parking, running dogs. That's where they arrested people just, I think it was 2 weeks ago. They were breaking into a house across the street under construction. They were stealing fuel from vehicles within the development. So I'm concerned as to how you're looking at the 911, because typically there's a premise history that you can file for, and it'll tell all the 911 calls that have come in from that address. And if you took the address within Teresina, I'm sure you'll see multiple instances of 911 calls. I think it's a waste of 911 system that we are calling the sheriff so often that they have speed dial on their phones of the people that are living there to come out when there's obviously much more pressing incidents throughout the county. I think that's not utilizing your resources correctly. But I can tell you from my property, I'm out there all the time. There are always people out there parked, roaming around my property with dogs, animals, you name it, they're out there. Personally, I don't have a huge issue with that. There's 99% of the people that come through that development are probably good people. It's the 1% that I'm very, very concerned about. And being in public service and the emergency side of things, I've seen the results of when you have people, that 1%. No gate will probably hold them. Your locks on your door probably won't hold them. The alarm system may not hold them. There's probably nothing that will completely keep them out, but if we can keep them out, do everything we can to create a barrier for the people living in there, for their families, I think that's huge. I think that's why people gravitate to developments that have gates. One of the reasons I bought, and I've been in gated developments for many years, is for a sense of security for my family. When you're working 48 hours or 96 hours away from home, you're uncomfortable enough leaving, but when you're leaving a family of young kids and a wife at home, it's tough to think about that when you're gone away. A level of security is a gate. A level of security is locks. A level of security is alarm system. A level of security is cameras. Do they all work all the time? No. But boy, if we can keep that 1% out of there, I'm a happy camper. That's who I'm worried about. I'm worried about the people that don't listen to common sense. They really don't. They're not professionals. They go in there because maybe they're high. They're a little bit crazy. Those are the ones you worry about. You can replace stuff. Can't replace someone getting hurt or something happened to your child. And you can't replace the guilt that you're going to feel as a parent for your wife or your family if something happens and you haven't done everything humanly possible to keep that from happening to them. That's my huge concern. I know most people are great and they're wonderful people. And I enjoy seeing them. I enjoy the fountains in the front, and seems to be honey to the bee. It draws a lot of people in, and I'm not so worried about those people. It's the other ones that would do harm to somebody in there, and it's not getting better out there. And I think the last report that we did, I brought up the Roseville paper that day, and first front page was they arrested people in Granite Bay for kick-in robberies. Page 3, they arrested people in Roseville for home invasion burglaries with people home and actually got in physical confrontations with people in the process of stealing. It's a tough, society's getting tough. And if we can do something to help make things safe for us and our families, and not only that, we bought under that premise. And I know it seems to be a developer issue, but I've got the sign, gates approved. Got the letter from the county, gates approved. Did I know it was a 2-year limitation? No, I didn't know that. I had no idea. I didn't know it expired in 2 years. We all got together because of all the issues that were happening out there, assessed each one of us. All of us unanimously agreed to put the gates in. Went to the county thinking we're going to do an over-the-counter permit, and we found, oh, wait a minute, your gate is expired. Your whole permit process, you got to start all over again. That was a huge slap in the face to everybody out there. Caused all of us some concern because people wanted the security. They wanted to be protected from those who would do us harm. So we've had to go through this process, and we've gone to your subject experts within the county. They've gone over this, and they said it doesn't. The gates, where they are, 175 feet from the road, do not take away the rural characters. You guys should have that in your report from your own subject experts. They approved it. We went to the zoning. They approved it. We went to Granite Bay MAC, your municipal advisory committee that advises you on everything that's going on out in that area. Unanimously stood up and said, we approve their gates. We understand what's going on out there. Now we get appealed, we come to you guys. We get appealed again, we go to the Board of Supervisors. We're just homeowners trying to protect our families. That's what we're trying to do. Gates will give us another level of security. We have significant issues out there. One other I would say that I've seen that I think that affects it, it's a subdivision of cul-de-sacs. And it's been open for years because people weren't building out there. The economy tanked out. Kids, young adults, those who maybe are undesirable have learned it's a great place to party, a great place to shoot your guns, it's a great place to ride your motorcycles, your quads. It's their free land. There's been nobody out there supervising. As houses go in, they don't like houses going in there. They use that same access they've always had to go out there and investigate and go through and look at homes. And that's fine to look at a home under construction. But then you start stealing it. It's fine to look at a home that's built and beautiful. But when you break in, that's not a good thing. Someone's going to get hurt out there. Someone will get hurt within that development because for some reason the beautiful entry draws people in. And like I said, 99% are great people. That 1% aren't there to look at the great scenery, the home, be part of the community. They're in there to do people harm and to steal. And I'm asking you as a commission to really look at that and understand the desire of the homeowner within that community. It's very important. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me? I'm sorry.
I think that's got it. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Schaefer, anything you'd like to add? Okay. We'll close off.
A lot seems to be being made of the issue of security and break-ins and 911 calls. I'm wondering, as representatives of Placer County, why the 911 calls don't seem to be being recorded.
It's a very good question.
I mean, you guys represent us. We're all making calls. We go there and try to get information on the calls, and there is no information. And almost everybody up here says we've gone to the 911 system, and we've looked, and there is no record of any criminal activity. But we're living it, and we're seeing it, and you guys represent us. What's going on?
That's a good question. All right, I think with that we will officially close the public hearing side of things so that we can get on with the discussion amongst the commissioners here.
Is your microphone on?
I believe so.
Is it?
I've
Maybe a little closer
put
to
my
it.
face into it enough.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start off because I know, because I do have a farm gate and hearing all the testimony, I guess my feeling about it is as our last speaker said, it doesn't take care of 100% of it. In other words, if you have a professional thief that is casing an area, a gate, cameras, locks aren't going to stop them. But it does stop the people that are driving around looking for the easy targets. And honestly, I was a little bit amazed by one of the proponents of no gates has a gate on, at his residence and has had theft. And, my comment to that was, it's lucky you just lost a wheelbarrow full of product versus, somebody driving up a van and loading up all of his TVs, a lot more. And I've had that happen to me. So I understand that. And I have always had an issue of the rural no gates and stuff, because I was raised on a ranch. I know a lot of farmers. I know rural areas. Rural areas are beautiful when you're driving the public roads and you're looking at the fencing and you see livestock, you see the trees and stuff. But when you drive down, if you live in a rural area and you see a road that's posted, it's a private road, no trespassing. If you live in that area, you don't go down that road. And you know, my whole life driving around these areas and living in Placer County and stuff, it's sort of a dichotomy for me when I hear people say, well, no gates make us more social or whatever, and then, you know, having it all open and stuff, and yet when you drive, whether it's Placer County or anywhere else, you see the, you know, private property, or you see the farm gate and everything. And I guess I've always had an issue with this, because personally I feel that there's the personal rights of people, whether they're developing land or they own it or they come in and buy property and then say, look, this is mine, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to take care of the interior roads and everything, and I don't want the general public on my property. I only want it people that I invite to my property. And it gives everybody out there the opportunity, if they want to live in an area that's not gated, they have the right to move there. Or if they want to live in an area that's gated, they have the right to do that. Or if they buy property, they have the right to gate it, whatever they're going to do with that property. And so personally, it's something, to me, it should be the right of the individuals. It's no different than the gentleman coming up and saying that his personal residence is gated versus the community that he lives in, that they put a gate out in front. And I always had a issue when I hear somebody that lives in a neighborhood that's not gated, and then somebody that wants to live in a gated neighborhood say, no, I can't, you know, that you can't do what you want to do, you have to do what I want to do, or you have to live in the neighborhood that I live in. So having said that, I think everybody pretty much knows my position on this. But for the security purposes, I do feel that it is a layer of protection for the people, because if you're keeping people from bringing their vehicles in, yet they can still walk in, they can ride their horses or their bicycles, at least if they have bad intentions, they can only steal what they can carry on their back, unless they steal the wheelbarrow and take whatever they can load it in.
Anyone else? Jerry?
Robert Frost once said that good fences make good neighbors. And I guess the corollary to that is that gated communities make heated debates. In order to understand my analysis of this, we have to go back in time, back into the 80s, when Placer County was experiencing an unprecedented growth, and there were a number of gated communities that sprang up. Most of them were south of Douglas Boulevard, Wexford, and so forth. And some of them started coming up Auburn Folsom Road, Shelbourne being one of them, Los Lagos, and Clos de Lac being some that spring to mind. At that time, the community became involved in the update to the community plan, and what do we want to do about gates? And there was a debate that we don't need to recreate here. We certainly have argued it ourselves, as you all know. But the issue was, do communities with gates separate themselves from the community as a whole, and that was debated back and forth. And the community and the Granite Bay community decided as a whole to put the standards into the community plan that while gates are not per se prohibited, they have to have significant extenuating circumstances, an undefined term that I suppose, much like pornography, means something to everybody a little bit differently, and it can't be defined. So that's the standard that applied from 1989 until we changed the community plan here recently, although ironically the standards that are applied recently haven't changed all that much. And by the time this was really imposed, the significance of the plan was that those subdivisions that were primarily north of Douglas and certainly Olive Ranch were to be more rural in nature. The zoning for the lots up there got bigger, and it wasn't as condensed and urban as it was south of Douglas Boulevard. So in 2004, along comes the folks who want to put in the subdivision at Teresina. And they present the proposal that you see up on the screen with the roads and so forth. And they knew that there were going to be no gates allowed. They hadn't made the case for gates. And by going ahead with that subdivision, what they were telling the commission, and I was on it at that time, was that this meets all the standards for security and so forth, and we think this is going to be a good project. And now they want to come back in and put in the gates. And the standard that applies is significant extenuating circumstances. We don't have to have the debate on what we think about gates. That's been had. And we have a standard that we have to apply. I understand the security, but the question that I asked those who testified was, some of them, what differentiates Teresina from either existing subdivisions or those that hypothetically might be built next door? And there's nothing. I live not too far away in an area that has dead-end streets. I live on a cul-de-sac, and yeah, we have these things going on too. I don't remember who it was, talked about having to take the beer bottles off your yard and drive through the 500 cars trying to get to your house. I've had to do that with the helicopters from the sheriff department overhead. It's just part of living in the rural environment. So I accept the standard that's been imposed upon us by the community at large, and now I have to weigh the question of what are the special, significant extenuating circumstances. And I don't get there. The subdivision, and while I feel sorry for the folks who are having issues, once it's built out, they may be mitigated, if not eliminated. But at the moment, I don't see any differentiation between this subdivision and the one that may be built next door. I do see a significant precedent that could be set here, and that is this is one of the first ones north of Cabot-Stallman Road that we've had an opportunity to consider. We've had a few. Richard, you asked what have we done on the community on this panel before. There are some that come to mind. One was the Atwood project right out here just beyond the jail. When that was first submitted, Jack Remington wanted gates there, and that got turned down. A little bit further out, Atwood Road was one that was under construction, and they came in, and if you could replay the testimony from that hearing, it would be very much like this one. People are hanging out there, they're smoking dope, they're doing drugs, they're stealing things from the houses that are being built, and that was turned down. Two that have been approved that I remember, one is the one that was right behind Wendy's, there at Sierra College and Douglas Boulevard, and that's because it was so proximate to a heavily trafficked area that the traffic was coming there as a matter of routine. It was a small little cul-de-sac square type thing, and so that got approved. And the other one was the folks who lived behind Granite Bay High School. The kids were parking on their lawns and running down the street and hopping the fence to get to school, and it was physically damaging the lawns, so we approved a gate there. Otherwise, they've been pretty much routinely turned down. So I would propose to this commission, what are the significant extenuating circumstances that differentiate this project so significantly from those similarly situated that would justify the imposition of a gate contrary to the expressed desires of the community as put forth in the community plan. There are some temporary things that have been suggested, but apparently haven't been fully kicked around. One was temporary gates, but those do have a funny way of becoming permanent in the long run. And the other that popped into my mind that wasn't addressed by anybody was, what about subscribing to a private patrol service to come through a couple of times in the night? Something to that effect. Tiffany said something that kind of intrigued me. She said, while we may not have the right to put up a gate as a community, people can put up gates in front of each of their houses and fence. And she said that gates in front of each house ruins the sense of community. Well, now we're back to what the Granite Bay community felt as a whole about the gated subdivisions. It's the same comment, just applied differently. So in my view, I haven't seen the special significant extenuating circumstances. I've seen circumstances, and I've seen cause for concern, but I've not seen those extenuating circumstances. And with respect to the appeal and the 2007 determination, I used to have a secretary had a sign on her desk that she pointed to quite often when I came out with something. And it said, lack of planning on your part does not justify a crisis on mine. And I feel very much the same way. The fact that the developer didn't build within the 2 years does not justify us having to reach a different result than would otherwise be reached by examining the facts and applying that standard of significant extenuating circumstances.
And I guess what's special or significant or extenuating
It's in the eyes of the beholder.
Depends on whether you're living in the subdivision or just driving by it.
That's probably true.
Well, and then under your thinking, well, if they never did it, there's no problem. I mean, really, until the gate's there, and if the people came back in 2 years and said, hey, look, all of our problems of the vehicles driving in and hanging out at the end of the road or in front of houses that people are on vacation stuff, it's cut it by 80%. Yeah, then we'd have something hard to go with. But really, in our, with what we're doing, it is sort of a judgment call that because of the size of the lots, the rural nature of it, sort of the dead end, the only one way in or out, it's our call to say, well, yeah,
you're right.
They do have a good thing, but just a blanket say, well, no, I don't feel there's a security issue because I have the same issues that they have. Well, if you put a gate in front of your roadway for however many houses are on that street, you wouldn't know for a while if it took care of the problem or not.
Ken, I didn't say there weren't security issues. I said there weren't significantly different.
Well, but that, when you say significantly different, I guess everybody has an issue, and it's just a layer. If some people feel comfortable not having a gate and feel comfortable with what's happening around theirs, or just completely against it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if the other side of that is there's the other people that say, look, we would like that level of security. And that's what they're asking for.
The issue, though, that I'm hearing, Ken, is, if it weren't for the Granite Bay Community Plan and what the Granite Bay Community Plan has already laid out, in not the current one, but the previous one, as far as an emphasis for this area, then, we would probably be dealing with these arguments on every proposal that comes forward. But I think what I'm hearing is the Granite Bay Community Plan laid out a vision for this part of the county, and that's what's guiding the discussion and what's significant. And so, the argument that you're making is a valid argument, but are we going to continually make this argument all over the agricultural area? Every time somebody comes forward with a proposal, or if the community plan addresses the issue, are we going to honor what the community plan is addressed, at least as far as we can tell? And so the discussion of what's significant is a good discussion, but as far as
policy.
Policy,
Yeah, but that's,
it's kind of, yeah.
That's been
that
had.
is the question, though, is it significant enough
Well, Ken, using
to go
your,
against the policy?
using your argument, how do you then, let's put a hypothetical subdevelopment or development just north of this one, okay? And they're before us with some proposal, and they want gates. And their argument is exactly the same thing. We know that there was security next door, and people came in, and there was theft, and blah, 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 blah. How are you going to differentiate that development from this one, and the one beyond that, and the one beyond that? Where, how do you differentiate? And what I'm saying is I use the standard that's in the plan, and this didn't come up to that standard. It was a pretty high bar, significant extenuating circumstances. Otherwise, I agree with your points.
I think now it's working again. I'm going to stay out of this argument between these two here. I guess it wasn't an argument, a discussion. First of all, I want to thank Tom Perkins for calling the staff, and staff thank her for giving me his address and his letter, or else I probably wouldn't have gone out. But I did go out and drive through the neighborhood. Now, I could have been reported as somebody that shouldn't be there because I have an old pickup truck with the tailgate that's not the same color because the original one was stolen. But I did go through all the way down to the other end and enjoyed going out and visiting. But I have a real problem, too, with trying to interpret what a significant impact is. The new general plan, I know we're not operating under it, but it kind of gives us some guidance. And it tried to define what those are, and basically if you're near commercial and some of the other things that Jerry talked about here. So I kind of use those as kind of a guidance, because a lot of the other subdivisions out there, or even in Roseville, would have security problems. So I don't believe that's the issue here. I think there's been a lot of confusion from the original approval, then to the zoning administrator's approval, the expiration, and then them going back to the zoning administrator, then not being the right forum. So here we are today. My feeling is that a lot of the problems are related to the economy, like was mentioned by a lot of the people here, as far as the slow build-out rate. I believe once you've got all the houses built there, and with eyes from every location looking at the neighborhood, like every neighborhood watch is the best eyes of the people who live in there, I think the problem won't be any more significant than any other developed area. That being said, I do think that some of these other temporary measures should be looked at. Either a temporary gate, although Jerry made a good point, they've sort of become permanent after a little bit, but private security and things like that. Because I think it would be setting a precedent, because I think everyone has a security issue. We do have a general plan, the old one and the new one, that are very similar in this regard as far as gates. And I think we do, if we want to disregard the plan, I guess we can to a point, but I'm not that type of person. I like to look at the plan and base my decisions on what the plan says. And here it says significant adverse circumstances, and I don't believe those circumstances have been brought forward to my satisfaction.
Okay, now, thanks for getting back to Jerry's. I can understand.
I'll get back.
Yeah, and maybe part of yours too, Rich, on that. I could see a difference if you had high density where your neighbor's house, in most communities, you're looking over the fence and you can see your neighbor cooking in their kitchen or whatever. But on acre, to large acreage lots and stuff where your house might be screened from the neighbor, where if somebody just drives in and drives up to the side, out of sight, I mean, you are more open. Now, I know it's not addressed specifically in the plan saying, okay, if you have 10 acres, you can't have, you can have a gate, or, you have to have a minimum of quarter acre lots or whatever, depending on density and stuff. But I think from a security standpoint, visually, it's easy enough, yeah, if you have 5 or 6 neighbors that are right close enough where there's probably going to be somebody at home all the time monitoring as a neighborhood watch and stuff, you know, is a good reason not, you know, to enforce it, not have gates. But from a security standpoint, where you don't have a lot of neighbors that can monitor your house on these bigger properties, that, you know, I feel that's reason enough.
You know, Ken.
The new plan is more specific.
But I think we'll still be having the
Well, I just sort of said it's a high density project.
Okay.
Say, Ken, I don't know if you've really addressed some of the other alternatives that might be available, like the hiring somebody to patrol the area a couple times a night or something like that.
Yeah, that works. You know, that is an option. But you know, if they had a gate monitor that was there monitoring the gate all the time, that's another option. But with all those, there's ongoing costs, and honestly, economically, I mean,
well, we can't weigh the economics here.
I know we can't, and a lot of times in government process, that is one of the big problems. Is there's a cost benefit ratio and stuff, and honestly, I know at times it has come up where, be it fee structures and everything else, you know, becomes a issue. And yeah, it's easy enough to say, okay, if you have somebody come in, you know, 4 times a night or 5 or 6 times a night, what's the cost of that ongoing, you know, versus something that maybe is effective but more cost efficient, you know, and in the scope of cost what an association could bear.
Well, I'm presuming that these parcels are zoned for agriculture. Is that correct?
Rural residential.
Yeah, rural residential.
Rural residential, which takes into account agriculture.
20-acre rural residential.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess, you know, I just can't help but think that there's a lot of alternatives that are available, and everybody's got to develop their own strategy to deal with this. You know, I know when you get out to the more rural areas where you have the predators that really go out there because they know that there's nobody lives out there. You know, like son-in-law's strategy with his tractors when he leaves them out in the field is the worst thing that could happen is to have somebody break all the glass to get into the tractor, so he leaves them unlocked.
The worst thing is when they steal the tractor.
Well, if as long as they know how to drive it. And so, you know, that's a strategy that he's got out there, and he doesn't have any gates, you know. I mean, he does have a lock on his diesel tanks, but people still break those. And so, you know, it's a society where people are going to go out and they're going to steal wire and they're going to steal stuff, and oftentimes the farming community, the expenses that they go through when they lose this stuff is very high. But so what distinguishes here, you know, and that's what the question is, I think. And what strategies have really been looked at by the community other than just a gate? And I don't think we've heard many considerations of other alternatives.
Well, I don't think it's not in the plan, and then I hear opponents saying, well, we want the gate, and then opponents say, well, we don't want a gate, but I haven't heard, you know, all these other things.
But the other alternatives that could be looked at that might be a strategy that reduces the likelihood of a problem.
Yeah, but the question before us is gate or no gate.
Mm-hmm. And then we're dealing with the community plan also.
Yeah.
And the standard of review.
Yeah.
Have any of you been out there on the weekend when we have hundreds of cars lining the 2-lane?
I'm real sorry.
Yeah,
when we get into our discussion, we're not supposed to have any comments from the public after we close it.
Well, if there's no more discussion to be had, I'll at least make a motion so we can see where we stand. And I move that we disapprove the subdivision conditional use permit for the gate entry for Teresina subdivision.
Second.
All in favor?
Better do a roll call.
Roll call.
Yeah, I figure we're going to that, but go ahead, Kathy, if you would, please.
Mr. Brentnall?
Yes.
Mr. Rakucci?
Yes?
Mr. Denio?
No.
Mr. Moss?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
3-2.
Okay, so this has been, the motion to deny the application has passed. Should anybody wish to appeal this, they have 10 calendar days from today to do so. The fee is $520.
And that'll go to the Board of Supervisors.
Yes, that would go to the Board of Supervisors. And on that note, if nobody objects, can we take 5 minutes and
And have a little pickup, I'm not embarrassed, but it's a 95 pickup with a different tailgate color.
Okay, I think we're now ready for the 10:15 item.
Oh, sorry, 10:15 isn't it?
Don't have to wait any longer for this one. This is subdivision and conditional use permit modification for Olive Ranch subdivision. Roy?
Thank you, Chairman Moss. This is the second gated entry for the day, and it's for the Olive Ranch subdivision. And there was no gate originally proposed. There was no gate denied or approved as a result. And the location in the yellow is showing the 15 acres all in one piece. It was approved, but the final parcel map is not yet approved. It was purchased by the new home company, and the developer had problems. So it's all showing as one parcel map. And on Olive Ranch Road, it's 0.8 of a mile to get to Cabot-Stallman right here. And then Cabot-Stallman loops up here and goes around, and Barton Road comes down again to Olive Ranch. And it is 0.92 of a mile from the center of this subdivision, where the access road would be Carlisle Woods Place Road, to Barton Road. Now the issue again, this was submitted before the approval and deemed complete before the approval of February 28th by the Board of Supervisors for the revised updated Granite Bay Community Plan. So it comes under the 1989 Granite Bay Community Plan. And again, the issue is significant extenuating circumstances, which was Goal 1, Policy 15 of the 1989 Community Plan. This thing is slow. I'm not going to use those right now. Okay, this is the project site as it exists, the 15 acres, and shows an aerial view of it. The closest road on the north side is South Shadow Oaks Lane, and Cobblestone Court is on the south side of Olive Ranch subdivision. This shows the parcels that were approved and a 12-lot subdivision. And in the middle area are open space lots, parcel A, parcel B, and it's a lower area in elevation. When you're at the Olive Ranch, it goes down in elevation, and then at the very end of that cul-de-sac is actually the higher point in the elevation, slightly higher. And the road proposed is known as Carlisle Woods Place. And the proposed entry would be consistent, would meet the county standard for this subdivision. And this is the view of the proposed gates with 3 pilasters and 1 pedestrian gate on the right-hand side. Let's see. Now, the arguments that were used at the MAC hearing by the applicant was that traffic would come through on the access road and think it was a cut through to get to Cabot-Stallman Road, and then hit that cul-de-sac at the end and likely speed out of there. The other argument that was part of the application, and there's a letter from the applicant attached to the staff report and exhibit, was that this school over here could have events, that there'd be overflow traffic that would end up coming into this subdivision and parking on the Carlisle Woods Place Road. Staff did not agree that the case was made for significant extenuating circumstances. And on April 4th, it was taken to the Granite Bay MAC as an information item. And the MAC voted 5-0 not to support the request for gated entry. And so staff is recommending denial of the request. And if there's any questions.
Roy, the place is empty, isn't it? I mean, we haven't built anything yet.
Yes, I thought they're here. Yes, it's undeveloped.
Oh, okay, thanks.
And the final map actually isn't approved yet. And the state did different extensions to push out the expiry date for subdivisions, and it's still a valid approval as far as the subdivision goes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Roy. Okay. Mr. LaDuca.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Marcus LaDuca, 3200 Douglas Boulevard in Roseville. On behalf of the new home company, I'm welcome the chance to be able to present our request to you for a security gate for the Olive Ranch subdivision. Again, my client did not own the project as it was processed through to the Commission for approval. The property went back to the lender last year, and my client acquired the property and inherited the approved tentative map late in 2011. If you look at that map in the staff report, again, you see somewhat of an anomaly here on this map. There are 7 total lots. It's a long, narrow property, 7 total lots. You have 7 of those lots at the front near Olive Ranch Road. Then you have this large open space area right in the middle. The road crooks off to the northwest, and the remaining 5 lots to the rear. And that really, in that open space area, the 2 lots, they're starting to approach a third of the acreage in the subdivision. In terms of looking at that, in terms of the regional context, really a couple bases here. The first, and for those of you that were here during the discussion on Rancho Del Oro and the issue with Shadow Oaks Lane, in terms of a north-south route, trying to get north to Cabot-Stallman, big issue because one of the homeowners on Shadow Oaks Lane was tired of people driving on his property. It is a private lane, and so he put a wall up. And so there are issues about people being able to go north and south from South Shadow Oaks Lane to North Shadow Oaks Lane and connecting to Cabot-Stallman. So the issue of a long, narrow property with a roadway that you can't see the back of, but it's heading due north, does create the potential for cars to come into the subdivision thinking, well, I can't get up there because I know that it's blocked off by the wall that was built by one of the property owners on South Shadow Oaks Lane.
Isn't that what a not a through street sign is for?
No, absolutely. And a sign, people...
Sometimes obey them and sometimes...
Sometimes obey them, sometimes don't. But the key request for before you, and again we heard for a couple hours this morning, was really a focus on security. Because you have this large open space area smack dab in the middle, the lots at the front cannot even see back into the lots in the back. So you have 5 lots to the rear of the subdivision. You have properties with homes either to be built or being built adjacent to it. So you have just rear fences, and you have the ability for someone to come in and park in the subdivision. Wouldn't be seen from the cars necessarily, or from the 7 lots and the 7 homes on the south, or from Olive Ranch Road itself if the sheriff were driving by, and you wouldn't even know they're there on the site. And so that's really the crux of the matter. In terms of the evidence that's out there, we did want to address some of the issues that would.
Before you do that, I don't understand what it was you just told me. You said that.
Can I approach?
Permission granted. There is a red light over there somewhere that you can.
Oh, great.
Now you don't have to approach.
Well, you trust me with technology because I'm sure I'm.
Well, you want to make sure you get on the record, and that way
you put down your deposit.
Okay. Technology, I'm going to short the whole building out, and I'm going to cause damage to the county facilities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have these 7 lots. You have this open space area here in the back. Back here, these 5 lots aren't visible from from these lots here. Someone could park right in this area right here, be in this area, have access to these. No one can see it from Olive Ranch Road or, frankly, from these lots here. You're screened. If anyone's been out to the site, it's pretty heavily wooded. It's not
Is
just...
there a requirement that one lot be able to see all others?
No, I'm just saying, on subdivisions, a lot of times, especially where you have open space corridors, they're either fairly thin or they're at the back of a subdivision. You don't have a typical situation on a 15-acre lot of having this large of an area that basically almost created two projects in terms of that. All we're saying is from a security standpoint, given especially what's been going on directly across the street over the last number of months, that being the case, that we thought it might be prudent to approve a gate at this location.
Why don't you reconfigure it and put the open space up front?
You can't, the open space here isn't going to be touched. Those are trees that are all preserved. If you put the open space, you're going to end up with a 6-lot subdivision.
I would think that, given that you haven't built anything, why don't you just reconfigure it to eliminate that problem?
Well, but eliminating lots,
there's economics.
You could do that, but it's almost punitive. It's like, well, you want this knock out. This isn't like it's a 400-lot subdivision where you could jigger some things around and end up with some a different location of some lotting, different street location. The street can only go in one place, and the lots, in terms of having lots on the site, given the fact that you have a large open space area here, it's not definitely maximizing the project. 12 lots is not maximizing the project on the site. This isn't a question, however, of pedestrian and bicycle access to the subdivision or to the open space area. As with Seymour Ranch, the New Home Company welcomes folks from the surrounding neighborhoods being able to come into the site. Even the standards were set forth in the community plan update about the dawn to dusk of the pedestrian gate. They welcome that. Just as they are doing with Seymour Ranch, people are able to come in, walk through the site, and enjoy that open space. It really is a function of the potential security issues for the back 5 lots. Again, and I wasn't involved in this project, I've just had it heard hearsay, but I know that there were some comments when Winterhawk came through with their gate regarding isolated lots. That's really the issue and the focus of our request. Looking at, and the only way we were able to get any information at all was to go on, again, that map thing where you get the sheriff's mapping and you plug your address and they give you a circle. Unfortunately, the legend is almost impossible to read, but I can relay to you information that I've received from some of the subdivisions, so if I could hand this to you.
Sorry about that.
On that open space, because it is densely wooded, is
Yes.
there any lowlands, wetlands or ravine area right there?
Are there any wetlands in that area? No. There are preserved wetlands on the site.
Okay.
Again, it's almost impossible to read the legend above. This was taken for a 6-month period between mid-October and yesterday. The yellow arrow, or the red arrow, is where the location is. Directly to the southeast is Grosvenor Downs, which I am very familiar with since I lived there for a number of years. And the stories that have been not only reported to the MAC, but also in the newspaper, are the number of crimes committed over a 6-month period. They are property break-ins, they are door kick-ins, a lot of vehicle crimes directly to the southeast. I mean, literally it's the subdivision as you cross Olive Ranch Road. So in terms of evidence, in terms of extenuating circumstances of having some situation where you are seeing a lot of crime, there are areas back there where you do have open space areas. I know it for a fact. My ex-wife still lives there. Her house was broken into. There was a burglary. She has an open space area in the back, and they just came on in, and she was out of town for a weekend. They kicked in the door and basically made off, and they didn't need a wheelbarrow. They just pulled on up in the court, and off they went. So So that's really the focus of our request. One, there is a possibility of cars going up, looking for that connection, given what's going on with Shadow Oaks Lane. But the other really is the security of those rear 5 lots. We're appreciative that Roy showed the Seymour Ranch gate. The picture of the gate that's in your packet, that's not what's going to be proposed to be built in terms of the solid. It would be more of the decorative gate as was built at Seymour Ranch. I know there were questions in your last discussion regarding alternatives. What else could you do? And for example, could you just hire security guards? Well, in fact, the new home company at Seymour Ranch did that until the gate was built and operational, and they were paying $5,000 a month to deal with cars driving through, potential, theft of construction or break-ins to the new homes that were there. The minute the gate went up, and again, that gate is closed. It's open during rush hour periods just because of where it is located on the crook of Cabot-Stallman Road there. The minute the gate went in, there were no issues. And they've been able to cancel the security service. It literally stopped it in its tracks. Now, obviously, $5,000 a month for security, and if you want someone there frequently, that's pretty stiff. In terms of being reasonable, I don't think that's a reasonable requirement to say for a subdivision, you have private roads, you're maintaining at your cost, and oh, by the way, you need an extra, large sum of cash to have a private security patrol. When a situation like this where there is something that can address the issue at hand. So I did want to address that because I know that that question might come up. I agree with Mr. Brentnall. Temporary gates, my experience is if you have a temporary gate, it's never going away. Or the people are saying we counted on it, we moved in, it was there. It's somewhat of an offshoot of what you heard earlier today. So that's the basis of our request before you. Again, this property went back to the lender. You have a new person in town that wants to build a project, doing a very good job. He's one of the few builders out there that's selling homes in the South Placer area right now at Seymour Ranch, and he hopes to be able to bring that same type of quality here with this project. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions the Commission might have.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Sir?
I'm puzzled by the security concern, Marcus. Your proposition here is that the first 6, 7, whatever it is, lots there at the beginning cannot see the 5 lots at the back. Therefore, a car could come up and park back there and be up to mischief without being observed by the front lots. Is that essentially it?
That's an aspect that people can, if you drive up, as opposed to, again, as the comment was made, if you ride your bike in and you can still commit a crime if you walk in, ride a bike in. But the fact of the matter is if you drive up here, you're not going to be seen. If you've been out to the side, you can't see through that.
Well, would it be any better if the road was straight?
Again, the approval of the road not only tied to there was tree issues, but also wetland issues, and so if you have to go back in and redesign the project, one, we then get to have further environmental impacts because you're going to be removing not only more trees, but potential in terms of wetland impacts, and so you almost create by
We're kind of speculating, though.
Right, a mitigating factor. Yeah. And so that was one of the issues, was as the Commission approved, was the idea to preserve this area to the greatest extent possible.
On the other hand, security wasn't presented to us because I was sitting on the Commission at that time. It wasn't an issue.
I was, and again, it wasn't involved. Don't know who the developer at the time, what they were thinking.
But I'm puzzled by this concept of the lots in front can't see the one in back. Let's change this hypothetically and make it a slightly wider lot, and the road comes up and then makes a 90-degree turn somewhere just north of the green zone, and the other lots are kind of around the corner. Would that then qualify as the same security concern? Because we have a lot of subdivisions like that, and one end can't see the other.
No, I understand, but I'm not sure I understand completely. You're talking about moving the road.
Hypothetically, come up to just to the northern part of the a little bit higher, right there, and the road. Let's say the road made a 90-degree turn and went over several hundred feet to the right or left, okay, and the lots were over there. And I'm, for this purpose, I'm extending the width of the lot to something wider so that we can make a corner, like we see in so many subdivisions. You know, how would that security vary from what we're seeing here?
Well, the fact of the matter is, it wouldn't. If you've been out, if you went on the site right here and look back, this is pretty much
it's dense
area. It is
dense.
Right.
It is a really dense area. It is not like some of the projects on either, to the west or to the east where you'd have a little pocket of density and then really sort of thin trees you could see through. This is dense, this area here.
Yeah, I guess in essence I'm demurring to your comment because I don't understand why it is the lots in front have a requirement to see the lots.
Oh, and I'm not saying there's a requirement. I'm just saying for purposes of those future lot owners, the request from the developer, in this case the new owner of the property, in terms of developing the site, those 5 lots back there, he can foresee there'll be an issue.
And the fact that they're separated physically constitutes the significant extenuating circumstance.
Right, that you have this large open space area that's heavily wooded in the middle of the project as opposed to a side or a thin, sometimes you have thin creek corridors as we have in Granite Bay. They're sometimes just the width of the creek, a little bit more. There's some foliage there, but not having this wide of a swath.
But we have that all over the place, with open zones in the middle and they have trees and they break up the view shed. I just don't understand what's so special or significant about this one.
If I can just make a comment, I think what I'm hearing and seeing in this, that somebody can drive in there, and so there's people in the houses up front. They drive not all the way up into the back lots, but they drive up 2/3 of the way up into the woodland area, pull off to the side of the road. One of the guys gets out, he wanders into the back. The people in the front really don't see the vehicle. They thought they just went up somewhere. The people in the back
don't know he's there.
They don't see it. And then the person's walking around there and he says, okay, lot 12, looks like it's, nobody's home and stuff. Drives the car up into the driveway, loads up the car and drives out.
That's where the neighborhood watch comes in from the other lots.
And they can't see.
That's
I think the point he's making is that the neighborhood
when you
watch
use
can't
the
see.
example if okay, you went up there and there's no open space, there's no woodlands, there's no foliage there to sort of screen somebody parking and then somebody going out and casing. If it did a 90 degrees, everybody's going to be able to see a vehicle parked, whether it's where it does the turn, because there's a residence right close there by, and they would be able to see it, versus there's a screened area to pull off and hide and case.
And just to address one issue, because I know it came up in the last hearing, so again, different circumstances, different location, everything else. There was a concern about a project as a potential, as a precedent. We're definitely not that here. There's on either side of us, either end, on the east end of Olive Ranch and the west end of Olive Ranch, have been gated subdivisions approved. So it wouldn't have that issue relative to the one where it's the sort of, the only one in an area, for example. So I just want to make sure that was clear on the record also.
What about the property adjacent to the property, east and west, though? That's not developed.
Yeah, if I could pull up an aerial. Okay. I don't know. So far? Okay. All right. There you go. Okay. The property's right here. They are developing.
Oh, are they? Okay.
There's homes on South Shadow Thing all the way up here. There's a new home construction here, but there are homes up on this side.
And they're the same, according to the zoning, it's the same density?
I believe so.
Are they on private roads, or are they gated, or?
It is, well, actually there was, as part of the Rancho Del Oro approval, to address this dispute between neighbors and what was happening to some of the people here and the criminal activity they were facing, there was approved a gate here that would be basically allow residents to go in and out, but at the same time have a Knox box for fire life safety issues, because of this. Otherwise it becomes, as you can see here, that becomes a little bit of a shortcut route. And so the person who has built the wall blocking that was, because of that very issue, is
during school hours, morning rush hour, evening rush hour. It basically was like a racetrack in front of his house. So he built a wall, which is an issue because now there's no fire for at this point now. Because of that, in order to have fire line safety up here, you could go around either way, up Barton, go around this way, and to get to North Shadow Oaks Lane. So you have gated subdivision here with Winterhawk. There's a gated subdivision, and then there would be a gate here. I apologize for the coughing.
Let me see. I don't know about Winterhawk because I wasn't here then, but there was a subdivision, I believe you presented it to the west.
Correct.
And at that one, I think our commission felt that the gates weren't warranted, but we were overruled.
That's correct, by the Board of Supervisors.
For the what?
By the Board of Supervisors, correct.
And
that
was
again,
my Board of Supervisors rationale, or what was the rationale for that, if you know?
the issue there, and again, it gets to some of the 89 plan, was one of the issues was the desire, if there is an ability to have through routes that obviously you don't want to create circulation issues in terms of parallel circulation, you know, east-west. And here you have, now it's not working. What?
Broken.
You did break it, Mark. I broke it. That's why
There'll be a time charge.
there you go. Don't ever give me technology, please. Okay.
I guess that means your time.
Bingo. See, it's back. It's Control Alt Delete. That's all I know. So with that, there was no ability to gain access. These are all developed here, and the issue was people being able to come through the subdivision, thinking there's a way east and west, and there isn't. These are all developed homes. These are all developed right here. So that was part of that approval. And again, with that project, there was also on South Shadow Oaks Lane an attempt to resolve the neighborhood dispute, which was to have a gate there.
And the zoning was changed in that parcel too, right?
Correct. There was a rezone and a tentative map.
And so it's no longer has the agricultural handle?
That's correct. Again, same size lots though. 40,000 square foot minimum, same as this project here.
Any other questions?
I think not for now.
And I won't touch that again.
My name is Madeline Kalani. I live at 7495 Red Bed Road. And I was wondering, is that a private road or a public road?
Pardon?
Is that a private road?
It's private.
Private road. Okay, it'll have to be maintained by them then. I have a solution. Just simply develop it back to front. Put in the 5 homes in the back and then have it come forward. And if it is a concern, then go ahead and put in a temporary gate. This gate situation is getting to be, I think they think of it as a cachet, and there's so many gated communities in our area. We're going to have more gated than ungated. I think if they're concerned about people driving on the road, they'll only do it once, and people aren't going to think, well, gosh, I can get through. If you have a GPS system, it's not going to happen. Although I work at Roseville Hospital as a volunteer, and we have people from Sutter who come there because for some reason, unknown reason, they send everybody to Sutter Hospital and Kaiser. So we have maps that help people, ironically enough. If anyone is injured or hurt, we take them in, but otherwise we guide them there. But if anyone has a GPS system, they're not going to do that. And if they're going to drive in, they'll do it once and that's all. And they're not going to have that much through traffic because there just isn't a through road there. And if you're familiar with the area, you know that. And so if they're concerned about it, put in temporary gates or build from back to front, and they can fill in the back and then come forward. And that open space is for drainage. I'm sure there's a creek through there, and that's why they had it. And if it's a private road, then that's what it is. If it were public, then the public could go in there and use that area. So that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. Anybody else like to speak on this?
My name's Jane Negri, and I live right down the street from this at 4502 Olive Ranch Road. And I commend you for supporting no gates on Rancho del Oro. I live across the street from that. And what this will create is going to be like a wall of gates down Olive Ranch Road. And Olive Ranch Road is a very rural road. So you're taking away from our goal to keep ourselves a rural community. So there's going to be 2 massive gates on the Del Oro project, and then there's a gate on Winterhawk, and then this gate is right here in the middle of them. So it's going to be on this straight stretch of road. Rather than be rural and open, it's going to look like, you know, a wall going down there. And as far as the Olive Ranch Elementary School, it is not a regular elementary school. It doesn't have events and activities, so people would not be parking. If they parked any place, they would park across the street, because that's not gated, and that has lots of open parking. Those streets are wide, and so they would not go and walk way down the street and park over there. And I just think there's so much of Granite Bay that we live like that. I have trees separating me from my neighbor, and they don't see what's happening to me. And the majority of Granite Bay is like that. So I think that's a very poor excuse for putting a gate on this parcel. So I would ask that you would deny that request. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could, I kind of, we've made a decision on the other project. This is a totally separate project. But driving down Olive Branch Road, and you think about actually the precedent that's been set in the parcel to the west, I guess it is. Mm-hmm. And you look at the subdivision on the east that has a gate, and then you look across the road and you see a fairly high density housing in that area. I guess what I'm kind of struggling with, and I don't know for sure where I'm at on this yet, but it seems like the precedent here is that we're worrying about on Laird Road has already been set. Mm-hmm. And so, at least I'm seeing a difference in terms of ruralness here, but I don't know where it comes out in terms of our discussion that's coming up. But I just wanted to make that comment that the ruralness has largely been precedented out on Olive Branch.
Well, if you drive down there, it's still very rural. I don't know if you go down there often, but there are big open spaces that aren't developed, and there aren't any other gates besides Winterhawk, and now, of course, Rancho del Oro's coming someday. I don't know when. But I live right across from that, and that will change the whole character of our community. So
you live across from this one here or the other one?
No, Rancho del Oro. Okay. But to add one more just takes away more of the character of our community and road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sandy Harris, Granite Bay. I live right around the corner on Reba Drive. You can see it up there as you turn on Barton. The traffic on this road is very low. It's more of a residential street. People who live there get back and forth. It boggles my mind that they bought this project with an existing tentative map that clearly says no gates. It went through the MAC, it went through the Planning Commission, approved with no gates, and before they even do anything, they want to put gates up there. It's totally a marketing tool. The Rancho del Marco, that was finally approved at the Board of Supervisors over the objection of the MAC and the Planning Commission and the residents. It was political. That's the only thing I can say about it. Most of these gate decisions they get lobbied. I've heard some really ridiculous circumstances put forth to get a gate that when we updated our community plan, we tried to put more specific reasons in there because we were losing it at our level. There's no reason for anybody to go through there. If you, like Jane says, if you went up there once, you'd know. Carolinda has probably We have 73 lots in there, 275 acres. We have 6 cul-de-sacs in there, a couple bridges, several miles of private roads. I can't see my neighbors. I live on 2.5 acres, and I can't see what's going on around the corner. I think that's a ridiculous criteria. I go to the MAC every month. Our sheriff comes every month, and they give us an update on crime in the area. And I sure would like to know where some of these crime figures are coming from, because the sheriff doesn't report them at the MAC meeting, as you know. They're usually very, very low. Douglas Ranch, across the street from this, has high-end homes. That's not gated. Cobblestone is right across the street from it. It's a small cul-de-sac road. It's not gated. It has nice homes on it. The Winterhawk subdivision was approved without gates specifically. They came in later and went through the process, did the political thing, got gates approved, because basketball players were living in there. All those basketball players are gone. And they should never have been approved. They weren't approved in the first place. It was an add-on feature. Lawrence Drive down there, I ride my bike. I go down, come down Cabot Stallman, go around Lawrence Drive, and I like to go through these neighborhoods because it keeps you off. Even though there's low traffic on these roads, there's no sides to get off the road when you're riding your bike. So it's nice to be able to ride through these areas and see people around. But there's no extenuating circumstance to allow this gate. And it would just totally destroy the neighborhood. Any questions?
Thank you. Anybody else wanting to speak?
I'm Dale Munson. I live on Itchy Acres, a private road. We paved over a mile. There's 3 90-degree turns in there. It's a mile long. You're fortunate if you can see your neighbors. You can't see anybody else. Again, and I think he's a real pro, but it's security, security, security. And as a member of the committee that rewrote the Granite Bay Community Plan, I never heard once that lots not visible was a significant extenuating circumstance. And I don't believe that's true of Itchy Acres or Moss Lane or any of these beautiful roads that are private and are over a block long. And so I'd suggest you disapprove of this request.
Thank you, Dale. I think that's just about everybody. Anybody else wanting to speak? All right. Marcus, would you like another stab at this?
Yeah, just a clarification. One, the argument about the schools, we haven't, we're not making that argument in terms of the proximity to the school and events, because again, it isn't used as a full elementary school K through 6 in terms of its what would be its demand and its needs and parking issues. Second of all, we have, again, emphasizing we don't have a problem with pedestrian bicycle access. It's an issue about vehicles being able to drive in and park. And to reach Commissioner Johnson's point of view, or his question regarding the nature of this roadway, these are 6,000 square foot lots right here, right catty corner to the project. R1 lots. Those are standard R1 lots in Roseville, Folsom, Elk Grove, every city in the region. Those are standard lots. No one can describe that as rural. Grosvenor Downs, where I used to live, those are half-acre lots. Douglas Ranch, which I got approved through the county, is third-acre lots, 15,000 square feet. There are 4 larger lots on the far side here, but again, third-acre lots. So in terms of looking down this length of roadway, I think it would be very hard-pressed to say that from this location right here to this location right here, that's a rural compared to, for example, your prior project in more of a rural area. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
Yeah, Marcus, I guess the challenge here is, though, with the community plan, kind of drew the line at Olive Branch Road. And so that line is getting a little bit fuzzy, it seems like,
Well,
approvals. But in terms of the community plan and what it's saying, and I think that's where a lot of people in the audience are coming from, how is this different? What's really unique?
Well, again, in terms of you say Olive Ranch Road is a dividing line. You have either end, you have a gate, and actually there's now been 2 gates because there's been a second gate approved in this location here. So that's 3 gates approved in this distance right here that's already been approved. So if it's a dividing line, I'm missing that because from a perspective of the policymakers in the county, that is not the case. There are 3 gates that are approved in that short distance. So it's different from your discussion on your previous project.
And so that's what really makes this unique then?
Well, no, that just gets to the issue about whether there in fact is a prohibition or there was some language relative to a geographic limitation of gates. The issue with regard to what we believe the significant extenuating circumstances are what I focused on, which is really the fact of the way the subdivision layout is, and with the large open space area in the middle, that vehicles could come in there and create an issue for those back 5 lots. That's what we're offering is a significant extenuating circumstances, and particularly in light of the crime statistics that we pulled from the sheriff yesterday that shows right here in this area, oh shoot, did it again, but this area right here, that in terms of, in a 6-month period, 37 crimes, nearly all of them property crimes, including kick-ins, break-ins, and car break-ins. So it's right across the street. It's not something that, you're asking for someone that called or there's no record of it. There's a record of it.
And that's the uniqueness that you presented.
I think it's a fairly unique bulge that they've had in that area over the past number of months.
So Jeffrey, meeting open or closed?
Yeah, well.
Where's the 3rd gate that you're talking about? And where's the proof if he has sheriff's report? I want to see some of these figures. We went and got figures. Where are your figures?
Okay, thank you, Sandy. All right, I think at this point, I think everybody's had a chance to speak. We will close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners.
To who? Well, many of the comments I made in the previous matter still apply here. I don't subscribe to the philosophy that the fact that you can't see the car parked kind of in the middle of the project is sufficient to warrant the imposition of gates. What we've learned from the statistics, whether they're presented by Sandy or Marcus, is that there's crime afoot in Granite Bay. Okay, well, welcome to life. But the fact that the car might be able, hypothetically, to park and not be seen from either end, I will agree is a circumstance. I'm not at all certain that it's an extenuating circumstance, and I'm convinced it's certainly not a significant extenuating circumstance. So I would vote with the MAC and deny this application. It just doesn't meet the criteria. Anybody else going to speak?
Well, as you know, I guess, I'm kind of struggling with the precedents that set there in terms of, where the supervisors came in at on the previous proposal that we came up with. So I can see this area as being different than the Laird Road area, but I guess I'm still kind of struggling with the concept.
It didn't used to be so different. What we're seeing is a kind of a creep of the line. You mentioned yourself that it's kind of fuzzy, and that's really accurate as we're making exceptions to this. And
well, I guess, my argument, the last one still stands for this. And I mean, unless you want to drag in that it is completely different look than a rural area because it's no longer rural. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to say the size of the lots and the densities and everything,
but you still have the standard of the plan that applies, and that's significant extenuating circumstances. And what are they? All I've heard is
that's where I get back to the security issue.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Miss, you gonna talk?
Well, I'm just going to mention. I think I'm still troubled with the significant impact issue, but I do think that it does have a little bit of a different take on it as far as how long that road is, as far as the comment in the staff report or somebody made, that, you know, someone will go in there and they'll go all the way to the top and they'll speed back out because they're ticked off that they went that far and couldn't get through. But, you know, I think the no outlet type signs are effective. And somebody mentioned you go up there one time, you're probably not going to, and the word will get around to the high school kids that you're not going to be able to go through there. As far as the other one, we do have other subdivisions that aren't visible from one house to the other. So I don't think it meets the criteria, and I'd be willing to back up the MAC on this one.
And it does set precedent. You guys have all sat here and somebody said, well, you know, you did this for the house down the street. We see this a lot in Alpine Valley where they want to build 0 lot line clearance right up to the street. And they'll bring in a map and they'll have X's. This house has it, this house has it, this house has it, this house has it. Why can't I? And if we were to say that that slight curvature of the road is a significant extenuating circumstance, then every subsequent subdivision would cite that for the proposition that they have the same exact circumstances. And I just simply don't want to set that precedent.
I guess my counter question to you is, because you asked me, well, what would institute reason to have a gate? I mean, what if it was one parcel and the guy said, hey, I want to put that out, and I've got these 12 acres here and stuff. I mean, would you say deny it if he owned the whole acreage and said, I'm going to build my house out there?
No,
or if
you can put up a private. You can put up a farm gate. That's a private right. He doesn't have to come because he's not imposing himself on the public in any way by requesting subdivision map approval. That's the way the legislature set this up. So, you know, I can't begin to speculate on what would go on in there that would, in my mind, amount to a significant condition. Maybe if Granite Bay High School was directly across the street, you know, that might be one. Like we saw in that one. Were you on the board of that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You remember that? And they came in and their houses and their lawns were being destroyed. Yeah, that might be one. But I just don't see it here. So, Mr. Chairman.
Well, just let me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still kind of.
On the vents.
Huh? On the bricks, yeah. But, you know, this being a more urban area, you know, I'm wondering if, you know, in the statistics that they've come up with, if this would, you know, would have a higher likelihood.
Don't the crime statistics ebb and flow based upon the economy? There's a correlation. It may not be 1, but it's greater than 0. So, you know, we may be having more incidents of that right now because of the way the economy is. But the location of this, whether it be urban or suburban or rural, as we heard this morning, I don't remember that distinction in the criteria to be applied in the community plan. It just focused on, for every installation, the significant extenuating circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And I guess what I'm hearing is that even though I guess Olive Branch is a line of demarcation because we certainly have a lot more density across the street.
Yes.
And that's what the community plan wants, right?
That's it. And the idea was as it went further north, it got larger and larger lots. And of course, as they imposed this, there were some pre-existing lots that were smaller and little clumps. You know, it's not a perfect world, so there were exceptions. But that was the general idea. That's why Teresina was, you know, way out in the rural area and the much larger lots. This one, your comment goes more to the approval of the project as a whole and the approval of the lot sizes. It doesn't go to the issue of the gate. Would it be appropriate to put in 6,000 square foot lots in this subdivision? Well, that argument would be for another day, but the argument would be, well, right across the street they have that, and so this really isn't that much of an imposition. And then you get into the argument of, well, where's it located? That becomes a relevant factor. But at the moment, the sole issue before us is, this is a given approval. Can they have the gate? And in order to justify that, they have to have the significant extenuating circumstances wherever it may be located. And I'm focused only on that, not where they are.
Okay. And in your mind, Jerry, security is not ever an extenuating or significant circumstance?
If it is different for some reason than that enjoyed or suffered by the community as a whole.
And I mean, I guess I'm a little confused. To me, I don't see that in the definition. I don't see it has to be different or extenuating from anything else in the community as a whole.
Well, I think
It
the
has
word
to be-
extenuating has the concept of differentiation as part of it. So if there's no more discussion, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the recommendation of the Development Review Committee and deny the conditional use permit to allow for the gated entry for the Olive Branch subdivision based on the findings, both CEQA and otherwise, that are contained in our staff report.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We can go straight to a roll call here.
Mr. Brentnall?
Yes.
Mr. Riccucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denayo?
No.
Mr. Moss?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
3-2.
Okay, anybody wishing to appeal this decision, I guess may do so with the Board of Supervisors within 10 calendar days for a fee of $520. And with that, meeting adjourned.